I would like to
communication hasn't been something that a strength, and I'm not sure. Like, I don't know that if this chairperson, like if the chairperson if that's a value of his, and that's a concern for me.
Is there any other discussion? Then I declare the nominations closed. All voting to support Mr. Holtzclaw, please raise your hand. All opposed? Any abstentions? Then it's unanimous. Mr. Holtzclaw?
Thank you, Dr. Szymanski, and fellow board members. Brings us to item number 2 is nominations for vice chair. I'd like to nominate, or make a nomination of Kevin Williams.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Tom. Any other nominations for vice chair? I'm hearing none. Call the nominations closed. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of Kevin Williams serving as vice chair, say aye. Or raise your hand.
Okay.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Kevin, congratulations, Kevin. Okay, item number 3, call for nominations for board secretary.
I make a nomination.
Yep.
Judy Benson-Clark.
Second.
Motion made by Tom, seconded by Judy. I mean, seconded by Ken.
Nomination of Amy.
It's Amy. Is there a second? Second by Kevin.
I'm gonna decline. So, thank you.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? Okay, hearing none, that leaves Judy. I'll call the nominations closed. Do we have any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Judy serving as secretary, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, Judy. The last officer selection is for the responsibility of treasurer. As for nominations for treasurer, please.
I'd like to nominate Nancy Katarina for treasurer.
I'll second. Seconded by Ken. Okay, any other nominations for treasurer? Hearing none, I'll call the nominations closed. Well, any discussion? I'm sorry?
Well, with the email about refunds, and you explain about how many times and how many things you sign when you refund.
Yeah. Bring some pens. Okay, I'll call the nominations closed, and all those in favor of Manny as treasurer, raise your right hand. I'll raise your hand. Your right hand. Raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, ma'am. Okay, that brings us to the first, next order of business, which is public comments. If anybody would like to address the board at this time, please come forward and state your name and your town, and the board would love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Haley Barrett. I'm a resident of Marlboro and a senior who attends Glastonbury Agri-Science program. The Glastonbury Agri-Science program is a program that Glastonbury High School offers for students from Glastonbury as well as other sending towns. If accepted into the Agri-Science program, students can attend the school for the full day or the last 2 classes of the day. This depends on the students' sending towns. If the students attend for the full day, they get to take all the classes at Glastonbury High School. They are pretty much considered Glastonbury students. This program has 3 components, including the classes we take, the National FFA, and our Supervised Agricultural Experience, also known as an SAE. The SAE is a project of our choice that we work on outside of school. I am doing an entrepreneurship project in which I work with my horse, Rebel. Many students also compete in competitions called Career Development Events, or CDEs. Some of these include public speaking, horse judging, and mechanics. In the Agri-Science program, we focus on agricultural topics as well as technology. The benefits of attending the Agri-Science program are that you can take classes that aren't in your average high school that teach you about agriculture. These classes give you more insight on the environment, plant sciences, animal sciences, and technology. Another benefit is that for some students that aren't interested in your average high school academics, this provides motivation to do better in school due to the fact that if you don't keep up your grades, you cannot stay in the Agri-Science program. Additional benefits include a class we are required to take every year. Freshman year, it is called Ag Survey. Then we have SAE 1, 2, and 3. These classes provide assistance in college and career research, record keeping, upkeep of a portfolio, public speaking, and creating a resume. In my personal experience, the Glastonbury Agri-Science program has helped me in realizing that I want to work with animals and people with different abilities in the therapy program. Not only has it opened my eyes to so many options, but it has also prepared me for the path ahead of me, and I'm already closer than I would ever been if I wasn't able to take the classes I've had the opportunity to take. The benefits of attending Glastonbury High School are that there are many clubs and sport teams that it offers. I had the opportunity to run on the Glastonbury cross-country team all 4 seasons that I attended Glastonbury High School. It was an honor to be among the great athletes and coaches that made up the team. They pushed me to go beyond my limits. I have also been an active member in quite a few clubs throughout my 4 years, including Fitness Club, the National FFA, Art Club, and Classics Club. Thanks to the Classics Club and my Latin courses that I have taken, I had the opportunity of applying for the Italian exchange. I'm happy to say that I was accepted, and my family and I hosted our Italian student, Carola, for 2 weeks in October. Now it is my turn to prepare myself for a 2-week trip to Rome, Italy in April. Despite the large size of Glastonbury High School, we are a close family. It is nice to be able to say that I was able to attend Glastonbury High School. Not to mention our current issues class that is a required class for all the seniors. Not only does it allow the senior class to all be together for that period of time, but it prepares us for what a college lecture hall would be like, while at the same time we are learning about what's been going on in our world lately. The school is one of the very few in the country that offers a class like this. I also have had the chance of taking classes that other high schools do not offer. For example, I have taken 2 physical education classes that many other high schools do not offer. The Alternative Environmental Activities class and the No Boundaries for Wellness class has helped me prepare for the career I want later in life. Throughout my 4 years in Glastonbury High School, I have tried to revolve or relate every class, project, and research paper around my career choice. I love that I had the resources to take full advantage of my time at Glastonbury High School. It made my time there really worthwhile. At some points, It didn't even feel like school. It felt like an actual job or real preparation for what's next. So thank you for providing transportation funds that allow the other RHAM students and I to attend Glastonbury this year.
Thank you, Haley, very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Please, please.
Yeah, Ben Colonna, Hampton, also part of RHAM Sports Boosters. Just a follow-up to the last meeting where we talked about fields and Rich Galarco taking over. I attended the Parks and Rec Commission meeting where a lot of people were putting out a lot of information that was misinformed. A lot of them were hearing it for the first time, obviously hadn't been to this meeting and no one's been to their meeting. They talked a lot about the contract that was sent to the attorney. Again, it was talked about the last meeting. It was over a month ago. I'm wondering if the administration could update us on where that contract is. We're talking about basically a part-time seasonal worker making less than about $15,000 a year when it comes out. So again, if we can get an update on that, that would be helpful. Also, a Thanksgiving Day game decision was made to play due to many circumstances. Rich estimates that it's about $4,500 in damage to that field. Not sure, where that money is going to come from. Obviously, the commission was concerned about where that money is going to come from. And I would ask, and I know Danny's spoken with Joe about it, if there's some way we could form a committee. I know Rich has got a subcommittee in the commission on RHAM for the purpose of the fields. Is there any way that we can get Mark Logan and Kevin Kanitis together with Rich, along with a few of the board members and a few of the booster members on a monthly basis to formulate a plan moving forward, and again, open the communication, as Amy had mentioned, get better communication on what's going to be happening. I know there's some booster members in spring sports that are already sending emails about what's going to happen in the spring. So again, if I'd be interested to help with that committee, if and when it's formed, and be willing to help set that up. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? And that brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, which will be additions to the agenda. Does anybody have any proposed additions?
Are we going to have an opportunity to talk about the reports in detail?
Which reports? Financial reports?
Financial reports.
I believe that I'm going to give a report from the finance committee or from the discussion committee review, and then Jane's going to, or Bob is going to do what was basically what they're planning for with the reports during the administration's report.
In that case, can we have a discussion then on where our meetings are scheduled, and we finalize our how meetings are how they are scheduled and reported to the board?
I just need to understand what it is. I don't know if we need a motion to add it to the agenda.
We had a mix-up, right? I was planning to go to facilities, and it was held on a Tuesday when it was scheduled to be held on a Wednesday.
Well, facilities got to.
Not the facility, finance.
Finance,
Right.
yeah.
So I was incredibly disappointed in not being able to attend that.
Okay.
And it went on without proper notification, so it was an illegal meeting on top of that.
Okay.
And I'd like to.
I was going to explain it in the chairperson's report and in the finance committee too. 'Cause I still don't understand how it got flip-flopped. So, but that's fine.
We can absolutely discuss
We can
it.
discuss it. I don't think we need another
Okay.
motion
Okay.
to do it. I have no objections to doing that. Anything else? Okay. Nothing to the agenda. Bring us to item number 6, report of the administration. Bob?
Okay, the first item I'd like to discuss is the SRO. As you may recall, earlier in the month, the board had a meeting where there were presentations made by, excuse me, a sitting SRO, the superintendent of Colchester, trying to really review the whole notion of the school resource officer. And what I was charged with is to put some things together for the board. And my cover sheet outlines the various costs. And, looking at a school resource officer. The second part of it is a draft of an agreement, excuse me, that I tried to modify to meet the needs of Region 8. So it was just an overview of what an agreement would look like. I realized it would probably be some changes. Number three is the agreement between Colchester and the Colchester Police Department and the resident trooper. And then lastly, what I did is try to modify the Colchester agreement so it would fit the RHAM situation. And then I've also clipped to it some information that I received from the Hebron Finance Director. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think we're moving to discussion.
You want to discuss that now, or do you want to hold it off?
It's on the agenda at the end. I mean, what would you rather do, Bob? I'd rather have it on the agenda when we have it on discussion.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I have a list of questions too. But,
I still take that 8-7 where it is.
yeah.
Okay, next, the update on the scoreboard for the middle school field would serve the purposes of soccer and baseball. Just pleased to say that we have the check today, so we'll be filing with the building inspector. The check was for $108, and that was the cost of the permit. So I think the installation is next. So I just wanted to update the board on that. Next, the health insurance consortium. Included in the packet is the draft of the agreement with the health insurance consortium. Because as you would recall, RHAM, Hebron Schools, Hebron Town, Marlborough Schools, Marlborough Town, Andover Schools, Andover Town participated in a joint purchase of insurance. The group has been rather informal, and what everyone wants to do is kind of formalize the proceedings of the group. And included in that is a draft. And this was omitted from the packet. I have several concerns about it, and I've just outlined them here for the board. And I think that I think for the smooth operation of it, and I think to look at it from a RHAM perspective, I think some of these questions need to be discussed and answered.
Do you have any other copies?
I'm sorry, I thought it was short.
Or short
Yeah,
version?
oh, I'm sorry.
Did you want to take questions on this now, Bob? Because it's not on the agenda.
How do you want to do it, Tom?
If I could just share a few comments from this, and Bob, what's the turnaround time? Because I know a number of us were at the joint meeting.
There's a meeting this coming Thursday to discuss the agreement, and wanted to get some input from the board before it's up to that.
Before, because I know a number of members were there, does anybody have any immediate questions? I have a list of them.
Yes, you.
You go ahead, Mike.
Well, basically, I don't know if I would be in favor of being in perpetuity or something, because boards change over. It's probably good to have them come in front of the board every 4 or 5 years or something, but it's just that we'd be taking someone, like probably the superintendent, and he'd be going to that meeting and voting and committing the board. So we're giving him a very broad charge to go make some very specific commitments. I'm sure he talked to us beforehand or something, but you're gonna have different superintendents and they're gonna have different comfort levels probably. Well, we may have different comfort levels with them. So I guess the question is, who's gonna represent us and how we wanna work it?
Does anybody have any comments before I go through my list real quick? Because I don't want to take up too much time.
I want to make just a couple comments.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
I agree totally with what Bob wrote on his concerns, they were all concerns I have. As written, I could not accept that. I'd like to make sure that the board does have approval on that document.
Is that it, Rich?
That's it for now. Obviously,
As you all know, this group's been dealing with the purchase of insurance, goes back for some time, but the transaction is more complex, and it's becoming, I think, probably next to payroll, our largest expense item for all, but at least for RHAM. And I struggle with the fact that, I mean, I know the intentions of the members of the group are all well-intentioned and have the interests of the towns at heart, but it's a major transaction, and I think there needs to be more direct input or feedback from the boards that are represented. And some of the lists of the things that I drew up was, one is that I think all approved matters by the group should be officially ratified by the respective boards. I don't know if that just means it's a majority of the various boards. What is it, 7 boards altogether, groups, Bob, altogether, 2 from each town, and then RHAM, and then there's AHM. Is that a separate vote?
That's a separate vote.
So they have, so it's 8 members. I'm sorry.
No, I was reading them there.
yeah.
I think the 1-year notice to withdraw, I think is a bit long. I think if there is a notice, I think 6 months would be sufficient. Dissolution of the group should be done only by a majority of the vote of the participating boards and not the group itself. Again, my opinion or my thought, I think we should be headed with this. New members to the group should and can only be, it should only be approved by a 2/3 majority of the respective boards of the group, not the consortium. Insurance intermediary or broker should be required to meet with the respective boards on a quarterly basis. And I think there should be some rotation where the consortium should hold their meetings in the evening hours when members of the respective boards and public can be there to ask questions and in the interest of disclosure. So, we shared some of these thoughts during the meeting, and I want to thank those members that were able to join us at the joint meeting. I think the reaction to some of the members there from the towns that, or the other boards of selectmen, was that everyone has the best interest of the towns. Because one of the questions that I brought up is RHAM makes up about 48% of the transactions, is it thereabouts? We make up 48% of the transaction, but when you think of each town having a board and a board of education, board of selectmen, and board of education, each town in the component has 2 votes, but RHAM only has 1, that makes up 48% of the transaction. So I don't know how you break down that voting power or structure power, but I'm just trying to, I just ask the board to consider when you're reviewing this and sending Bob your feedback or thoughts as to if we can think of a way that where we think we can balance this. And I know everyone has the same interest, and that's kind of my reaction was the other night to the members who said, my board also has, or our board also has the interest of the towns at heart as well, so, in what we do. So that was my comments, Bob, and I'll break those down on the list, and to encourage everyone to share with Bob your thoughts and recommendations and that you want to have included. And I guess we'd just have to go through a process. Some will probably duplicate, some will come up with a master list.
I think, a lot of the thoughts that I've had are kind of mirrored in here. I think a couple of things come to mind, though. First and foremost is that it doesn't help the towns at all to make a decision that negatively impacts us, fiscally in particular, because it's just going to get passed back to the towns. So, and I do think we had that conversation. I think that particularly the boards of selectmen in each of the towns recognize that. They're not looking to saddle us with things. So I just want to make sure that, that spirit is out there. That said, I think if you look at the representation on the consortium, each town basically has traditionally had representation from a board and an administrator of some kind. It's either been, either representative from the board of selectmen and the superintendent of schools, or, something along those lines. Again, I think, Bob, that to have our superintendent as well as a representative from the board makes total sense, because at the end of the day, the board's the one that's going to be committing to anything financial or fiscal. So, and I know the group's intent is for you to bring that message back to the board. But I think in discussion, in conversation, when issues open up, there are going to be things that are going to be important to the board and how we look at the world that are potentially different than the way the administration looks at it. So it just provides them that immediate perspective and sort of ensures the support of this board in those decisions.
I don't know. A few years back, when we were having a large insurance increase, the board agreed to spend about $7,500 to have Milliman study that and give us some advice on it. And Danny and I went to the insurance commission, and you would think the prodigal son got fed to the brothers and then the enemies because they all thought, how could we spend so much money on something like that? Well, it's a $3 million expense to us. And no, I'm not entirely sure they all got it, but nor do I really think they're working against us either.
No, I don't think, no, and I don't think that's the thought, but it's just, it's a huge transaction for us, and I think differently from us than from the town, but I think it's one of these relationships that we both need each other to stay together, if not, we lose a lot of buying power, so.
All board stuff, there's push-pull.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yeah.
Are we in the process of renegotiating this? So are we in agreement right now and we have to decide whether we want to enter into another agreement?
Well, there's an agreement, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, that's been around since what, 1970?
1990s.
1990, sorry.
It's
And I
attached
think
to
that
the
we were
agreement,
just trying
at the back of
to
it.
update it and make it more, rather than it was just kind of informal.
Mhm.
So now they're trying to come up with more of a governing type of authority, more governance as an official committee.
This is, the consortium has been in place since 1997 on an informal basis. And with this piece here, so which is kind of interesting.
So I understand it's within our interests, or whether in the other people, towns' interests, that RAM be a part of it. Is it in RAM's best interest to be a part of this? As far as,
Yeah, it's in RAM's best interest to be in a group purchasing plan like this, whether it's with the towns or in a large group. Even the towns, same thing, you want to be in a larger group because the pricing is much better than in a larger group. So, yes, we both benefit from being together than if we were all on our own.
so if these proposals here or these concerns that were listed,
Yeah.
they make complete sense. What happens if we don't agree with, the towns and RAM don't agree with RAM having more than one vote? Because we bring almost half of the group to the table. Or if we don't agree with the definition of a quorum, how are we going to handle that?
We're gonna have to, well, politics, I guess, we're gonna have to negotiate it through and get through the terms that make sense. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we all realize we're not strong alone, so, backlash either way would be potentially catastrophic
Okay.
and costly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is this something that would be better being run by non-board members, strictly administration of the various groups?
I think that's how it's made up now. In fact, the administration of the town Board of Education, the superintendent from each board.
Superintendents of the various towns.
And then the first selectmen's from
The first selectman and or town manager.
Right, I forget that.
So, yeah, that's how it's put together now. So, and my whole point is, well, that's fine, but if there are major decisions being made by the group, should the voting boards approve them? I guess it's kind of, or at least the majority, it's kind of. And, you know, because part of the thing that we brought up is that it's, how many different plans in this? There's 30, they said, there's 34 different health plans in this purchasing group or whatever. And we had some troubles, I guess there was a little bit of debate whether or not we were told no, that the broker could not come out to visit with us to discuss our plans and so forth earlier on in the year. You know, for any of the superintendents or board of selectmen to go back to their various boards, their respective boards in the evening hours and try to explain the complications associated and the uniqueness of these different 34 plans and how they're set up, arranged, priced, coordinated, covered, what are the advantages, disadvantages. I don't think it's fair for Bob or any administrator to come back to a board and try to become all of a sudden an insurance professional in this environment, and try to answer all the questions we have. So to the extent that we should get at least the representative of the consortium, being the broker or the insurance intermediary, coming to the respective boards on some period basis, whether it's quarterly or semi-annually or whatever, to kind of give us what's going on with the plans, I think is something we should have. Now, at the end of that meeting, I think, and I have witnesses who were there, the guy says, oh, we'll come and see you at any time. So, you know, so I guess the emails I have, it said he wouldn't, but maybe that's something different. But,
I didn't
Yep.
get the impression that he was that eager to come to our.
no, I don't think he was that eager too, but.
Just for clarification, this says that the informal has been in place since '97, and this draft was written in September. Who wrote the draft?
I'm not sure who wrote the draft, but it was a proposal of one of the members.
Okay,
And
okay, so it was in them, that makes sense. Thank you.
And Andy Managia has what is he the person you guys selected as the?
he's the chairman
Of the consortium. So Andy Managia, who's the chairman of the Andover Board of Education, sits as the chairman of the consortium.
Okay.
I've heard, you mentioned like that there was research done at one point to find out about insurance and how people maybe weren't excited about that thought, about that money being spent. I wonder about what's in RHAM's interest about whether we belong to this consortium or whether we do self-insured. And I mean, I think that you're an expert in this field, so I mean, I'm thinking that you probably could be that person, but I'm wondering if this is informal at this point and we're going to formalize it, what?
Well, I think we're supposed to get our bang for the buck is that we have the gentleman from Lockton, which the group consortium selects a broker or intermediary who's supposed to be our expert, represents us in the market and tracks our claims and our losses and kind of tells us where and how and what we should be doing. They get paid for that. That's what Mike was representing. They had an RFP several years ago and they replaced the previous firm that was in there for a while. It was called the Founders Group. And then the group selected Lockton. And so technically we should have that. That's who that representative is. That's who, or that firm should be giving us that expertise. And that's kind of been a couple of board members, including myself, kind of a sticking point is at what point does that person come in to sit down and talk through the uniqueness of this? Because there's a lot of questions that I have. Unfortunately, I can't meet on 10 o'clock during the weekdays, like probably the rest of us. And so, you know, I could push questions to Bob and ask him, and Bob would get them and have to come back and give them secondhand. So it's just, I think the transaction is complicated enough, and I think for the fees we're paying, we should get that type of representation and consultation. And, you know, and that's the part of everything that last year when we were asking questions was like, well, you have to go through consortium. I couldn't write directly to the representative from Lockton, or at least he wasn't very forthcoming with information, and said, our board has the following questions that would like you to come and talk about these issues. And they go, well, we only meet with the consortium, and the consortium's gonna have to approve that. Well, you know our board. I mean, that's not gonna fly. So, so that's why when I'm asking you to look at this, think of some of those things that why this is so important and questions when you look at this agreement of things. And some of this stuff is in Bob's notes, and I made a list and others, and we can share and put them together. And I don't know how far this goes or how much we get in that at some point, but there should be a document coming back. And I think, you know, my recommendation would be to the board is that the board approve that, to authorize the superintendent to whatever that final document is going to be, and we vote on it as a board to give him authorization.
I feel much more comfortable with that. And I was going to request that at the end of this discussion, because I think that it needs to be brought back, because as you said, a $3 million expenditure is significant when you start looking at it and given the implications that it has on collective bargaining and many other things.
Now, there are some additional factors that have to be taken into account too, that the consortium has the ability to manage or to facilitate in addition to just finances. So one example that came up in the joint meeting was the discussion around reporting requirements. And with Affordable Care Act, There are a significant number of new reporting requirements that are coming out. They're going to create a tremendous amount of administrative burden to pull the data together, to get it in the right form, to get it submitted. All the members of the consortium are facing that same challenge. So if there's a way that collectively the consortium can come up with an efficient way to manage that process, it's to the benefit of all the groups. So there are things outside of just the price of the actual insurance plan itself that have to be considered. That's one of the other benefits of going through a process like this.
Hey, Dan, I got a question here. As I read this, this consortium has been around since 1997.
I think so, yeah.
You know, I never knew that, but I'm just curious now. We just did a contract with the schools, and now we got 3 years there. Now they got, you know, the medical insurance is in with their contract.
Well, for clarity, Tom, and for the benefit of the board, I think we've been talking about that. I don't think we've actually finalized it, but you got it.
No, I'm just saying, so I mean, are we saying that we have to wait 3 years before anything should really be done? I mean, there's already a contract with the teachers, and I'm sure that each town has a contract with some union.
Well,
How do you get them all together? I mean, geez, you're looking for a miracle.
well, the good thing is that this agreement is not attached to the bargaining agreements. This is purely the boards together accessing the market. So
Right, I understand.
regardless of what's in the various contracts, so
Right.
we have XYZ insurance and ABC insurance in this group, and the towns have this, and the other towns have that.
Yeah.
Basically, what we're doing is we're utilizing, in that consortium, we're combining our resources to try to get some economies there when we access the insurance market. So so basically, whatever's decided in our contracts, we go through this consortium to get it. is
Yeah,
basically-
okay, I see, okay.
To buy it, if you will.
Oh, that'll be pretty good if you do it, okay.
Any other questions, Bob?
I don't know how to handle this technically, but I would request some sort of motion if the board wants the agreement brought back before it's finalized. And I'm not sure the best way to do that.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to your.
I don't think we have it on the agenda tonight to do it, though. I'm not sure if we can, so.
Can't we do it as part of reports?
Can we do it in the report? Yeah, I guess we could, yeah.
Bylaws, 2/3.
Yep, I guess we could do that. We could do a motion to change the agenda if we have a 2/3 approval. Do we have a motion? To do it? Rich?
Yeah. I'll make a motion
Motion to amend the agenda to add the item number 8.8, which would be a discussion and possible action regarding the insurance consortium for the district. Okay, motion made by Rich, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Kevin, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Capital item 8.8, which is motion discussion. Insurance discussion.
Thank you.
Yep, okay. The last item, Bob, you have 6.1D financial reports.
Yes, we met and reviewed a number of formats for reports, and we've asked Jake to put some of them together, and there are a number of them, and she has copies of them, so what we'll ask her to do is hand them out individually and explain each one as she hands them out. That way, we can go from there. Jen?
Okay, in your board packet, 8.3D is the one that I believe that you're used to seeing, which is the budget report by program. So I think that's really self-explanatory. I did note in the memo to Dr. Zeminski regarding the budget adjustments to the new chart of accounts. I expect that I should have it wrapped up by March. So that's all.
Can we ask a question about that? Is that gonna interfere with, budget planning for next year's budget?
Only if I don't have them all done by the time the budget is ready to be presented. I don't know when we're presenting the budget. I thought that was,
I think what's scheduled, Bob?
I'd like to present it at the end of January, beginning of February. That's a tentative date. And I think that it's going to be influenced by part of the discussion this evening in executive session, because I think that there's some data I need the board to table before I go any further, and that's going to take some time to construct that data. And I'm not prepared to explain it at this point, but in executive session I will.
Well, then, we'll have to be done by the time that budget is done. So, I'll do my best. Okay, then, we discussed at the, finance meeting last week, I had, presented to, the members, Mr. Jacobson's, document that he gave out at the last meeting, which is Hebron's Board of Ed expenditure report. And I've made a copy of the report that Mr. Jacobson forwarded. And also attached to this report is our current board policy that talks about transfers of funds within the budget. So I've attached the board policy 3165, which discusses budget procedures and line item transfers, and also the board policy for line items. And if you look at the next to the last page of the document, in fact, I kind of made some scribbles on it, with a square around it. Because if you notice this budget line items, it talks line items in the board's budget estimate shall include but are not limited to the following. Pretty much, these items here are what Mr. Jacobson prefers, and also what Hebron uses now. So, on the second page of the document is something that was created back in at the end of this fiscal year that is fairly, again, similar to Hebron's expenditure report. So I don't know the Hebron Elementary's document, but I'm guessing that they're following the board policy that most districts have. This can be done. This requires, I have no problem doing it this way. What it requires, as I mentioned in the finance meeting, is each and every account number that we've created now in the chart of accounts has a, for lack of a better word, each account is flagged with a number. That's how I created this document that you have now. Each one. So all the account numbers that have to do with art are flagged with a certain number, and then when I run the report, it pulls them all together and gives me a number. I most certainly can do the same thing with this report. Just means I have to go and I have to flag all the numbers, and it'll take some time, but once those numbers get flagged, this report can easily be done. The only thing I don't have is, I can't find there was a transfer that the superintendent, that you had attached to this. There was a memo with a transfer, talking about a transfer, and on the back of it showed the transfers. And I believe the transfer that they had done was approximately $17,500. I don't know what their threshold is for transfers. But we discussed that also at finance. And so I had told the chair and the superintendent that I would try to research and put together a draft of a transfer policy that we utilized and that I utilized in the last district that I was in. So here's a copy of this, and this is really a draft. So so basically what I did, wait until it gets passed around. it appears in our board policy. It's fairly, it just follows the state statutes as far as budgeting. And they're really, I couldn't find any place in the policy where it talked about making transfers other than this 5% of the annual budget. And I understand that having these very large transfers at the end of the year is something that I think they're used to doing, but not that crazy about. And I don't really care for trying to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of the year. It's very hard. I think it's very hard to attempt to manage a budget that way. So in Tolland, when we had a transfer policy that I could transfer. I did my own transfers. We transferred between programs, transferred between line items. Any specific line or transfer that exceeded $30,000 then went to the board for approval. Now, you'll notice in the draft that I put the $30,000 in italics because one of the problems I ran into is if you move a teacher from special ed to art, that's more than $30,000. And for me to get board approval, the superintendent board approval to move a teacher from one program to another, it really doesn't make any sense. So I would like to see if we're going to do, if the policy committee or lack of, I don't know what you call it here because I haven't been involved in one.
Policy subcommittee, yeah.
Policy subcommittee, develop the draft for transfers. I'd like to see I'd like to see something for the program side of the budget. So when you're moving supplies and that type of thing, and something for personnel, so that we can take into consideration if we're going to move an individual because we moved a special ed teacher or an art teacher to math. Moving that salary is very simple. We just move the position, and I move the money. Because if you have to go to the board and get permission. We're kind of putting the cart before the horse because obviously the person's already moved to the math position. So, anyway, I think I've explained this enough. It's
2 months ago, you sent us out this budget. That one?
yes, I haven't gotten to them yet.
Oh, they're coming up, okay.
Yep. So I opened with this because you would pass this out and you seem to have liked
Well,
this one.
that one's the same as that one as far as I'm concerned, but.
So do I have any questions on this one or?
Yeah, quick question on the transfers. When you say it exceeds $30,000, is that a per occurrence or is that an aggregate for that calendar year?
The 30,000 was an aggregate. So if I, and I'm just going by, history from when I did before. So if I transferred $5,000 in art, then in the next budget projection, I transferred another 2. But when I hit the 30, then I would report to the board, this is what I did with all these transfers. And that's what it looked like, the one you had at the last board meeting. The memo from, what's the superintendent? Thanks. The memo, and then on the other side, it detailed that transfer, and that transfer was like 17,000. So that might be their threshold somewhere. And in that transfer, they did three small transfers and then 1 big transfer. That equaled the 17.5, obviously, both sides. So the short answer is yes. You report after the 30, but you go back. I would go back and report all the things that I did.
That's fair. I'd like to see some wording around that if we do adopt this draft, this policy, just to say that it is.
Clarify that's an aggregate, not per occurrence. Right.
I'm actually not comfortable with that. If we're moving a teacher from math to art, we went through a whole budget process of arguing whether we want that music teacher. And we took it out to the town, they got their approval. I'm not sure that we should be doing it like that.
And I understand that, Rich. I think the circumstances that could trigger teacher movement within the district in a year have some additional layers that have to be considered. So example, if you have a teacher that's qualified to teach AP classes of a particular subject, and that teacher no longer is available to the district for whatever reason, and the superintendent now has to fill that slot and has to have an AP qualified teacher taking over that class, there might have to be some juggling done, but it's gonna be specific to, I need somebody with these qualifications to slot into this subject for this class. It gets more narrow than just saying, we budgeted for this, this is what you need. It becomes, what do I have to keep the school operational day to day at that moment in time?
And maybe I wasn't, I'm probably not being clear. Someone terminates, and I assume in this district you have a policy where you post a position and somebody fills that job. So what I'm talking about is not, oh, we don't want a math teacher anymore. What I'm talking about is individuals transferring because they might have been a special ed teacher, but now there's a math position open and they're qualified to do that.
Right.
And then somebody else is filling that part position.
Well, we have a 20,000 right in our budget that authorizes you to make those transfers in that scenario. So it's already in our policy. Now, if you consider it an emergency, so you're already authorized to do that. If we want to up that, I'm okay with that for those emergency cases. But most of the transfers that we did at the end of the year were never emergency.
Did you send an additional page? Can you forward that to everybody? Is that possible?
I'm
The transfer page?
sure I'll have to dig it out.
It's like a pre-filled in memo, I think, with handwritten.
Yeah, it was a memo. I mean, they do it, Smith does it. Actually, if you bring a file, I know they're actually looking at adding more transparency to the transfers. It was on their, I was looking through their minutes of their meeting. So that's a big issue with them now. It's about transparency, and I can't back off on that. I understand emergency cases, and you're absolutely right, you need that flexibility.
I feel pretty strongly about that as well, and a specific example I think that we can point to is the fact that as a board, we can approve the hiring of paras for security, and yet there are two security people that are paras in the building. And my thought is, well, as a board, we didn't approve that, but somehow that it happened. And that's so as far as the board approving a budget and deciding on what the values are, I think that there has to be some transparency of actually what is occurring. Because it hasn't come up in any of the conversations that we've been having about security, and yet it exists. And I found out from another parent that this exists. So I think the transparency piece and that the board's values and what we've approved for the budget is actually being followed through with.
So Jane, how do you, Bob, I think that just like we just digressed from the security paras, those are hall monitors that have been in the budget for, and I asked Mr. Leslie to go back, and when were the hall monitors first in the budget, Mr. Leslie?
1957. I mean, I can tell you that when I started teaching in '83, they've been there, I know, for decades, because some of them had already been there for decades. So I think they go back.
Jane, at what course or what tracking are you going to, assuming that some sort of tracking or these transfer policies is affected, changed, whatever, do you have a protocol or recommended protocol of just reporting what takes place and at what interval? Or is there an interval, or is it just? That's what I'm saying, is it quarterly or something?
I think the policy committee needs to determine what they want to do and then follow.
Understood,
follow
I'm just
that
wondering,
policy.
understood, but what does that mean in work? So I guess what I'm asking is, if there is some course of making transfers or within that authority, is there any way, I'm sure you track them.
Well, I haven't done a heck of a lot of transfers since I got now.
Right.
Yes,
No, but I
but
mean, at some point.
when you initiate a transfer, yes, there's a.
There's got to be an entry made somewhere.
Yes, there's an entry made, and, there's I don't know if they have a form here, but if they don't, there'll be a form where, you
There's a
say where you
record.
bring it from, where you're putting it to, and the reason.
Why?
Mhm. Whatever the committee chooses to do is for the policy, that's fine by me. If it gets down to, and I think we've talked about this before, if it gets down to where if I'm moving $100 from art supplies to, thank you, because the cost of a textbook came in higher, and I have to get permission of the board, you've in essence paralyzed the finance department. We can't operate that way because nothing will get spent. I'll give another example is Mr. Flarco is looking for money for the field. There's no money for that. So do I say there's no money for that? Or do I say I need to find the money in the budget and transfer it? And also start the process of moving forward with whatever the board chooses to do in the field. I'm going to follow whatever you're directing me to do. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Yeah, you're tracking, so I mean, I guess at some point.
Sure,
there's
it's
some-
just not-
is it- What we have been doing since I've been doing it is in some unique situations, we made some transfers along the year, but last year we got to the end, and we moved approximately $700,000, I think it was, in transfers at the end of the year.
I think I mentioned to you at the meeting, or maybe at the last board meeting, the way I'm operating now is like I said, middle school art department has X amount of dollars in their budget. If they overdraw one account, as long as they have money in the art budget, that's the way I operate, because they have to be able to manage their budget. You have to remember, we budgeted a year and a half ago. What a person budgeted for a supply might not necessarily be what it came for, what they're buying it for now. So at this stage of the game, as long as they stay within the budget, and I think the principals can attest to that, they know that they have to, be looking at the overall program, art, reading, music, that type of thing. So at least that way, they can operate, they can run their schools, they can buy their goods, what they need, they have to stay within that program.
I was just gonna ask Jane a question, because she's had experience with other companies, correct? I mean, you work for other,
I worked in 2 other school districts, yes.
yeah. So, I mean, it's nothing uncommon to be transferring money from column A to column B quite often, right?
No.
Everyday experience, correct?
Well, no, I don't really do, no, we don't do it on a daily basis.
No, but I'm
I do
saying
other
you-
things besides money.
Even when you
But-
budget all the money, as the year goes on, you got a whole year.
Right.
Certain things happen at certain times and certain, things in the budget, you get a lot of transfer going on, right? And I notice also, there's an audit at the end of the year, and I've never known any red flags or red lights to go off, that we've ever had any problems.
Well, I don't think the auditor necessarily is looking to see how we do transfers, that's.
No, I realize that, I know they're not gonna get that nitpicking like we do, but there's no big problem. There isn't money that is left, that's gone, that nobody can make, like where it went, correct?
I wasn't here, so.
Well, all the years I've been here, there never has been, and we've always been in the black, we've always given money back. And for some reason, some board members think that the Hebron Board of Ed wrote the book on bookkeeping, which I doubt very much they did, okay? And then even some of the information I've come up with lately, we got a couple of spendthrifts on that board, on the Board of Ed, the Hebron Board of Ed. They write with a big paycheck, and a lot of the taxpayers don't know it. But there's a lot of money they spend that don't really help the taxpayers in general, I'll be honest with you. As compared to RHAM, we're a high school, and some stuff, a grammar school spends more money on stuff than we do. I don't know, I kind of wonder about the superintendent they got. So I wouldn't take so much to this, that being that important the way they do it. I think we should do it what we're comfortable with. And all the years I've been here, we never had problems.
I do think there's merit. If you look at the policy structure, and this is, I just looked up Hebron's, theirs is almost word for word the same as ours. It's CAPE language, right? And CAPE language basically, as a framework, indicates having a quarterly review of where you are involved on line item transfers that have happened in the previous quarter. So, if I do stuff in July, August, September. In October, I get a recap of what happened in the previous 3 months. Here's what we did, and we get a validation. I don't think that's unhealthy, to do a more frequent review of what's happening on line item transfers than once a year, when it becomes a massive amount of transfers, a lot of information to go through. You know, I think that's reasonable.
So, to bring this discussion down, I guess to close the loop on it, I guess, is what essentially we talked about on the mix-up with the meeting for finance on the 9th, is that basically I asked Jane to give us all the requests and questions people are asking about forms and policies and documents and forms and procedures, to share that with us so that we can all look at it. Finance is going to meet again, get your impact and get your input and feedback, and we'll have another meeting and we'll sit down and we'll go through this, because it's easy to make policy. It's another question to have Jane manage it, and I think that's where the balance is. So I think we need to look at what it is that she has. The good thing is that I think the format of doing I guess what we call not a program budget, but the object budget, I guess it is. The object budget, at least from speaking with Jane, is not an impossibility. It can be done. She mentioned earlier she has to code some of these things. For instance, when you look at an object budget, you may see that there might, I think it was an example you mentioned, in one line, there might have been a little bit of an overage in one particular program or teacher or something,
Correct.
which probably means that that person is split between art, maybe in special ed or something else.
And that's
so-
been fixed since
so-
Wednesday night.
So there's a big coding that she has to go back to. And the other news is that not only, once you have it set up, you can do the program budget and the object budget. I keep saying program budget because we use that word. I mean, but the object budget and the program budget, because I think Bob prefers to see the program budget. Is that right, Bob?
I do, because it just lets me look at each program, each subject programmatically. And, you know, the question always comes up about what does it cost to teach English 1 or art?
Right.
And that gives me that flexibility. I think that, you know, you look at it in many ways, but that's the way I'm more comfortable managing it, because then that lets me hold the department heads accountable for their own budgets.
So my going back to that is that once you built in and coded everything in the whatever structure it is that you need in the system, then you can extract those reports fairly regularly.
I can create something like this.
Right.
Okay.
And that's kind of.
That was an example for discussion. I also
Right.
sent out one during budget season from E.O. Smith that I thought was even better. I didn't find that again.
So
The
there's been no
one that
decision.
came out 3 weeks ago, or 3 months ago, I really liked. And that was coming right out of the computer today, right? And you're gonna hand it out in a little bit.
Right.
Now, so the fact that I used Hebrew, that was an example of one.
I actually appreciated having it. It was helpful to me by looking at it.
It
So
creates a discussion.
It helped the discussion. So, I mean,
In the past, our reports, all last year, were closer to what Hebron had than what we have today. So I'm sort of asking that we go back to where we were, is.
Okay, well, like I said, we're gonna meet again.
Right.
You got the input. We're gonna discuss it. We'll go through it. But it's gonna go back to finance to look at this, till we get a document that is manageable, that can be done, and that everybody agrees the format.
There's two aspects you have to keep in mind too. One is the output, right? The report format, how I see the data presented. And we've talked about that quite a bit now. The other is the data that goes into it. And this is the piece that, what my request was to Bob and Jane was, these are, in converting from one chart of accounts to two chart of accounts, it's a massive amount of administrative work to make sure that everything goes back, and that I'm double checking on the back end to make sure everything ties back correctly, right? That's a lot of labor. So what I've asked is, you know, for very honest feedback to the board in terms of when we would see certain things happen. So, because I don't want to get a report with a new format only to say that for the next 4 months, the data in the report isn't what we think it is, and when it says, you know, we're over budget by 20%, we're not really, because I still have to move 2 things to a different object for the new chart of account. You know, I want to know that the data going in has been reformatted to new chart of accounts. When's that taking place? from a timing perspective, and then when will we see the output from that? That's, I mean, because that's the bottom line here.
Yeah, that's fair, but I mean, there's gonna be people trying to spend some more money later on tonight. And I don't feel that we really know where our budget is yet, at least from a board point of view. The budget, the program budget really hides a lot of that stuff. Hide might be the wrong word, but because each of those line items, the vast majority is salary, all the other stuff gets lost. The salary, we don't have any choice at this point on that. But all that other stuff, we can make trade-offs, and that stuff we need to make sure we're on target. Last 2 months ago, we got an object report that did show some over, some obviously explained by needing to move money, but some that we know are over. We've had a lot of extra legal fees this year on this board. We are over on that account. We should be looking and finding out where we're gonna get that money to cover that. And I don't know, and there are a few other areas that I would fall into that same category, that they need to be a transfer into those accounts, and we have to come up with that money. And as for the Rich Clarko thing, I agree. If you don't have the money, I would expect a recommendation to the board of where to get it and to approve it.
Right.
I think we should approve it.
Any other comments, or Jane, go ahead, you go more, sorry.
While you're pushing that up, on the finance, I'd also like you guys to talk about the other two reports that we get. The cash flow and, what was the other one? Cash flow. And it'd be nice to have, what, previous years correlation. So I looked at those. It really gave no meaning.
No, the cash flow statement actually provided some very good meaning because there was about 7 or 8 years ago, going back, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, there was a question about the levy and the tax the way that the towns collect their taxes. And what was happening is that some of the towns at the time that we were billing out for the levy was not being paid on time because of the time when the towns collected. So what we did was we needed to revisit how much cash the district needed, because there was a question of, no, this is what we needed. And then so what we did was say, okay, well, let's start seeing the cash balances. And we got into a meeting with the 3 towns, and I think in the first, I don't know, it was by October, it was like a $6 million balance in the account. And so the towns were asking us to look at the levy schedule. So basically that cash flow report or cash balance report was to get an idea how much cash, because whether or not it was going to create a hardship on the district, whereas some of the other towns were complaining that if because of levy schedule, let's say for Andover, we paid in at a different time, that the revenue at the time, there was actually revenue that came in on the bank accounts back then. It was before interest rates went to out the window. So there was a question from other towns saying, well, geez, you know, there's interest that we're losing out on because certain towns aren't able to pay according to the levy schedule. So those cash flow reports were to use as a tool to decide to adjust the levy schedule would be. So that's why they're there.
No, I don't question that. The only question is whether you could have the corresponding last year's equivalent, just to have a relation.
I guess you could, but
Future,
that's a lot of work.
The thing would be very close would be the percentages, not the dollars, because the dollars are a function of the budget. For example, if we asked for 5% in the month of July, that would be consistent. But the dollars, the amount of those dollars vary based on the budget. And see, what we've done is going in and adjusted that percentage based on needs and the ability of the town to pay. And in executive session, I can point out an example to you that even shows the importance of that percentage and how that ends. But I'd just like to do it.
Yeah, no, that would.
Understood.
So, and I'm going to pass these out at the same time so that at least we don't waste time passing things around. So the first one is object, which you've seen before. The second one coming around is function.
Oh, just different cover.
Yeah, it's the same cover
Different, yes.
format, just
Mhm.
different labels.
So as I said, the first one is by object code, so there it breaks down, you know, if you look on this, on page 2. It just, you know, object 110.
I got 2 functions, that's why.
Oh, you did?
You didn't have object. Is there another object down
So
there?
you have an extra object.
No, we got one.
So,
Never mind.
There we go.
Yeah.
you all set that? You got one?
Yep.
Okay, so now I'm talking about stuff my head because I'm So anyhow, your first object is 110, administrator, supervisor, certified. Shows all the, those positions. You go down to, down to page 3, it goes to teachers, substitutes, department coordinators, and so on, coaches, etc. So that's object.
And this is what I would want for our monthly report. Right there.
Just straight object, yeah.
Straight object.
Okay, so now, so go to page 9.
Function or object?
I'm sorry, object, I'm still talking about object.
Only
So-
says 6.
I'm sorry?
We only have.
Yeah, the object I got only has,
The number, like the back and front, so.
It's the-
Kevin, I'm sorry,
That's the
that's my
function.
copy.
This is your copy?
Yeah, that summary you have?
oh, this?
Yes, sorry.
Got it.
So you must have a detailed document.
Okay, there we go, yep, much better.
Do you need another object?
Yeah, I do. I got the summary one.
Geez, I'm-
There we
And
go.
that's the summary function. I was wondering where my reports are. Those are my socks. Those are my
Okay, yeah, so
down.
this is object details, function details, got it.
See? See?
Much better.
You want all these reports?
No.
We're gonna make you all crazy.
I don't
Okay,
know.
now we all
Okay,
have
got it.
like we all have a 22-page object report?
All right, yep.
Yeah,
So you want to go to page 9 of that one?
yeah, let's go to page 9. Sorry about that. So anyhow, it's after page 9, you see object 290, other employee benefits. And it has a budget of $2,000. And then, but it has all these negative balances. That's because that benefit is someplace else that I haven't moved yet.
In moving the chart of accounts.
In moving the chart of accounts.
Right.
They might have been put someplace else and not under something called employee benefits. And I'm still trying to find where that is. If you look at, but if you look on page 8 and you look at unemployment, object 260.
Third
So
one
there's
from
your
the bottom.
budget for unemployment, $20,000. You see my projection?
Mhm.
We spent 12.5 year to date, and I'm projecting you're gonna spend another $41,000. So there's an account that's projected to be $33,000 in the hole. And that's based on the bills we've gotten so far for people who are getting paid unemployment. Now, there might be somebody there that's a high cost person that all of a sudden goes away. So that, as the bills come in, I'll adjust that encumbrance. But I always try to project what I think it's gonna cost based on what we have, so that it's not a surprise later on.
Now, the projection is, how is the projection here?
See the $20,000, there's an original appropriation for $20,000. The adjusted budget is $20,000. You have a month-to-date column, a year-to-date column, so year-to-date we spent $12,591.
Mhm.
And then, I'm assuming that everybody knows what an encumbrance is. An encumbrance is it's a plan to spend money. That's what an encumbrance is. When you create a purchase order, you say, I'm gonna spend this money, so it can't be touched.
Okay, so
It's
it's
like
good to
putting
see.
money in the bank and then bring it over to your checking account. So, so right now, we have an encumbrance of $41,000. So therefore, we have a negative balance. And I think we just received an unemployment bill, so when that bill, gets paid, we'll take a look at that encumbrance and, might adjust that encumbrance again.
Right.
So, and this would be a thing that we should expect to transfer.
At some point.
At some point. Unemployment, I kind of sit on for a while because it kind of does one of these, you know, because you have a lot of people during the summer who might have collected unemployment and then that goes away. So, but yes. At some point, if this were to stay this way, we're gonna have to transfer it. Transfer funds in there. So,
From somewhere else.
from somewhere else. So,
Now, that,
Amy, do you have a question?
I have a question. Why are we encumbering unemployment? How do you forecast that? Because are we paying out a lot of unemployment right now?
We've had unemployment for people who are collecting unemployment, that are eligible to collect unemployment, and so I encumber the money, assuming that I'm going to spend it. I'm not going,
so these are people that are unemployed today. You don't know whether they'll find a job or not.
They're unemployed today. They might have been our employee 3 or 4 years ago, but because of the way the proportionality is set up, we have to pay a portion of their insurance. I can give you another example of unemployment. We non-renewed a teacher. The teacher was hired, but the teacher was eligible to collect unemployment during the summer because we non-renewed. That's just a quirk in the law. Trust me, it went to hearing on that and lost.
But that's a legitimate estimate.
well, it's as legitimate as I can come up with.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's, they have a list of people, they say who they are. You know, I don't know the history of employees like I did in another district. Another example is, same thing, non-renewed, person goes and gets a job someplace else, they get laid off from that job. We pay the unemployment because they go back so many months.
So that's
quarters.
not likely to change at this time of year. People are not going to get jobs.
I just saw one that came across the desk today. This person was a paraprofessional. The claim, he's now living in Massachusetts, collecting unemployment, and we're being billed back. And there's nothing
From the state of
we can do about it.
Massachusetts?
I'm sorry?
From the state of Massachusetts?
Built back from the state of
It's
Massachusetts,
billed
right?
back from the state of Massachusetts because it's essentially a federal program.
So,
If I could ask Jane, excuse me, on an unemployment claim, is it good for a year? In other words, if somebody leaves and they're collecting unemployment, and they get another job, but they leave that job, can't they come back on RHAM's unemployment?
right.
Exactly, right? And I don't think everybody
Like what Bob was just saying is.
right, and I don't think everybody on the board understands that. Because it's never cut and dry, they can come back and you don't realize it. So you're gonna need money to pay on the claim. That's what, no, I'm just saying, that's why you gotta give a guesstimate at the beginning of the year. That's all, I'm just covering what you said. And I know that's the fact with unemployment. They can come back on you. That's all, clear and simple. Now, that saves you the problem of transferring somebody from column A to column B, that's all.
Now, was this report that you passed out, was that from the old chart of accounts?
No, that's this.
Because it's much more summarized than that one.
Oh, that's right.
That's the summary level of the report,
This
right?
way? Yes. This is the one where I said you took my back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
the one I
that's the
want.
summary. Oh, you want that one?
So if you took-
That makes my life easier because that's really easy.
Right, all
That's
you're
the
doing
one
is you're
I want.
taking this brick, you're printing that line.
Yeah.
Right.
But not all
Yes.
this.
I-
Yeah, that would be, that's what I'm looking for, is
Well,
that.
we'll
Yeah,
get
so
all
that's
that
very
from you. I'm
simple.
glad Jamie has the feedback, so when we meet again
Yeah.
for finance, we'll all know where everybody is.
So,
Okay.
all right, so I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were talking.
No.
I've done this so many times.
Sure.
Keep reading.
Is that it, Jamie?
And then there was the function, which is
Right.
the same thing, object, function.
The program functions, that's the applicant.
Exactly.
Right.
Most people budget now by object. In the olden days, my olden days, we budgeted by program. Both the districts I worked in, budgeted by program, reported by program. One district I reported quarterly. One district I reported every month. which is kind of, which is really what you're getting here. And then, you know, people have turned to budgeting and reporting and developing their budget documents by object as opposed to program. So, Bob likes programs, somebody else likes objects, but at least with this software, it's not too bad. But if we keep moving around, then it's too difficult to try to figure out, well, what happened on, and unemployment is not a good example, but how come it was over this month, but now it's not, because you're looking at it in a different way. So we just have to determine how to look at it.
When we go to a budget season and we get the new budget, how are we gonna be able to correlate it with the last year's budget? I guess we correlate it with this year's budget. We won't be able to correlate it with the previous year.
No, I don't think you're gonna be able to take a look from the previous year, but at least last year, well.
There might be some gross categories that you could compare, i.e. Teacher salaries, administrator salaries. When you start getting into some of the detail, heat, electricity, you'll be able to see easily. But when we start talking about some of the small accounts in the maintenance, that's where you're going to have a comparison.
So with that said, when we get to that time of the year, we're gonna really need the projected budget this year, the finished projected budget in everywhere, because we won't have any history to compare it against.
Any further discussion on the reports? Dave, did you have any other items?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, committee reports. Oh, okay.
Some good news. I've been working with the district's bank at First Southwest, and we're going to be eligible to refinance the bonds that were issued in 2007. These were bonds, these were the last of the bonds to pay for the construction of the high school to close out the project. What's happened is that interest rates are such that we can refinance the bonds within the appropriate time frame. And the estimated savings over the life of the bonds is approximately $300,000. Now, what we need to do to begin that process is, and this is why I'm doing this to you in advance, is to pass this motion that bond council has prepared. Once we approve the motion, I can sit with the bank and develop a timetable as to when the bonds will be, a timetable for refinancing the bonds, and then I can get back to you. But to get the ball rolling, I will request at the next meeting approval of this motion. Again, it was prepared by bond council. So please look it over. If you have any questions, please call me.
That would be for action, the motion would be for action at the January board meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
So, Bob, you don't know how much this will actually cost us to do?
I'm sorry?
You don't know, you don't have a number of how much it's actually?
Any cost of the refinancing will be taken out of the bonds. So the impact on the budget, there won't be an impact on, there will be, the only impact on the budget will be a reduction in the amount of money that the board owes to pay for the high school.
So you wrap it into
The bond costs are wrapped into the refinancing.
So loan fees or whatever, bond fees are all being wrapped into the finance.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Bob. Moving on to committee reports. First, communications and technology. Kevin?
So last meeting we focused on really two areas. One was working on broader, clearer public communication. That kind of came out in two angles. One is getting more in print media out there, and actually the last couple of weeks, last couple editions of the release have had significantly more content RAM related, which has been good in terms of getting information out. The second thing that we talked about were finding some ways to get creative in putting together consolidated calendars. Huge challenge here is you've got a middle school calendar, a high school calendar, and a district calendar, And to try to see everything in one place has been a challenge in the past. The good news is that Google Calendars allows us to do some things with blending the three, so you can see them all in one place, but know which event is which calendar. So we've started that process of getting that stuff integrated, so it's a whole lot easier to see what's going on. And then on the technology side, talked about what the district's technology needs are going to be moving forward. Bob had mentioned that Lauren is working in terms of a piece of the curriculum piece at looking at the upcoming budget, the 2015-2016 budget, as far as what technology needs are going to be for the district to match up with the curriculum and the content that are being delivered. So we'll see more specifics as we get to budget conversations next year for what we need for technology. The other thing we talked about was finding ways to get more targeted emails. So looking at a variety of tools, realistically what we're talking about is marketing email systems, giving the power of the consumer, in essence, of the information to select which communications they get and how they stay on appropriate distribution lists. So number of providers out there that do it, from free for small distribution companies like MailChimp all the way up through large commercial companies like Constant Contact. But the bottom line is allow me to come in as somebody in the district and click off, I want all information on academic issues, athletics, and music. And then when we send an email out, it's targeted to those specific lists, and I only get email for the topics and subjects that I'm concerned with. It helps keep the list name management piece much cleaner.
Who manages the list?
Ironically, the subscribers do, the people that come in. Basically, you give people a way to subscribe to the list that they want, and then when, as far as the emails going out, it's going to depend on the function. So athletics, the athletic director would manage what gets communicated to the people who have selected athletics as the subject that they want to hear about.
And then it's pushed into what's sort of and then
Right,
it's parceled out. So
exactly.
everything gets lumped into some queue, and then it gets sent, and then it sorts.
Exactly. And it says, okay, athletics related email, these are the people who said they want to get them, it goes to those email addresses. People also have the ability to unsubscribe too. So for example, when people have students that graduate, don't want to get communications anymore in certain areas, they can unsubscribe directly, and it takes care of that process as well.
Is that it, Kevin?
That's it for communications.
Okay, facilities. Joe?
Rich?
Oh, Rich.
I defer to Rich because he was taking notes at the last meeting.
I was there. Let's see, we talked a lot about the athletic fields, the comp fields. There was a football game on Thanksgiving. It was right after a severe few days of rain, and they really tore up the middle of the field. So it begs a lot of questions on whether they should have had the game, whether they could reschedule it. We had a lot of conversations, and there was no good answers. But as it was stated, you had an estimate of what was about, what was it, $5,000? $4,200 to repair the field because we had one game. We started having a discussion whether we should have a policy or procedure in place to keep from ruining the fields like that. So we had a lot of discussions on that. I don't think we had any real good outcomes. We did have a discussion then is how do we repair the field and get it ready for spring? And if we can't get it ready for spring, then what is the alternatives? I know we asked Bob to work with Rich Clarko to see whether he can repair it for the spring.
And we told him to call for purchase order to be available. It's just a question of when he's going to begin. And we had some issues that I'll discuss with you in executive session.
So that was going on. Then we had brought up some concerns where we have coaches driving on the fields doing damage. So there's several ruts that need to be fixed due to that. And we've been trying for a few months now to limit the coaches from driving on the fields, and we're discussing whether we need to put it in policy or not, because we still have that problem. We had 3 conversations on the capital improvement fund. One, we have the $100K from this year's budget, and most of that's still left on whether we should be targeting some of the projects that were on our list. I think we talked about the tennis court safety fence for the baseball going into the tennis court as one of our higher priority that we discussed during budget season. And we'd like to see them go ahead and do that one. We had a conversation on the HVAC in the media center, which is something that we wanted to do earlier. But based on the retro commission report, it raises some questions whether that's the right move. And we're not ready to say that it is without some further investigation.
What's the retro commission?
That's the study for the efficiency of the HVAC system.
Is that, I mean, it's not a state agency or something, is it? Or it's just somebody who did a report?
Well, it's sponsored by CRP. What's going to be happening is they're going to send a team of engineers in, probably about the middle of January, because this needs to be completed within 150 days. And what they'll do is they're going to go in and analyze each of the electrical systems in the building. What it's designed primarily to do is to take a look at our electrical consumption and see the ways of reducing that in addition to lighting.
And some of those controls have direct relationship to the HVAC, and that some of those CO2 sensors and FPC sensors that we've been putting in, their report had the recommendation of putting a lot more in there, stopping the humidity from getting into the school,
Right.
and maybe resolving the problem that we've had. And also, one of the recommendations was to run both coolers, don't run just one cooler. Would have another impact on that. So we're hesitant to go any further on the HVAC. Discussion of the truck, the old pickup has been retired, and we need to.
It's still around?
It's around, but not
No
really.
place.
So we have to get that on the capital improvement plan. And then we had discussed starting to prepare for next budget season's capital improvement plan. And then a few discussions on how the capital improvement should be managed. You know, when does something get onto the capital plan? Is there a dollar value? Is there a means base? And those conversations definitely need to occur. And I'm sure we'll have to get business manager involved in those discussions. Window replacement, we were expecting, and I since know we received an estimate for full replacement of the windows. And it came into just under $700,000. So we have that document,
How much?
just under 700,000.
$699.99.
Yeah.
If you buy now.
That's 10 minutes.
Now, that includes all the glass and the labor. So we're working on that. Bob also uncovered a document that states that our window warranty is 15 years and not 10 years. So that has a substantial significance.
Important.
And when he gets those documents to our consultants, we'll get a direction on where to go with that. Yeah. And turf, well, we already talked about the turf moving contract, because we're going to talk about that in executive session. But they were moving on that. And the retro commission, he just mentioned that they're working on CMP to get those engineers to do a more thorough design. And that would be a great energy savings. So that's all we do.
I got a question. On repair of the field, what did we get the price on repair of the field? We came up with, what did you say, 4,500?
He talked with Rich Clarko to get the price.
With who?
Rich Clarko?
All right. Well, all right. How did he submit that? I mean, he doesn't work for us. How's that coming out? How does he make a proposal?
He outlined the work that he was going to do.
When you say he, I mean, you're talking Hebron's Park and Rec?
Right, what we would be doing, in essence, is contracting with them.
Yeah, do we have a contract with him?
Not yet.
Not yet.
This would be
Okay.
outside that contract.
This would be, there are two contracts that we're talking about. One is for maintenance that a company like True Green had done in the past. And then the other one is to repair the competition field. So they're two separate contracts.
Mhm. Now, I think that we haven't hired anybody yet, right? To take care of the maintenance of the building and the outside?
We haven't hired a maintenance supervisor yet, no.
We haven't hired anybody, right? Okay. Are we gonna hire anybody? Or?
I'd like to discuss that in executive session.
Okay. No, I was just wondering where the figures were coming from, because we don't have a contract with anybody, so. All right.
All right. Anything else on the facility, Rich?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to policy. Kevin?
Policy did not meet this month due to some conflicts with negotiations in some other areas. The policies that have come up in section 8 will be from the prior meeting with a couple of comments I'll have.
Program, Amy?
We didn't meet this month, but one of the outstanding items is the guidance survey. And I'm hoping that Bob can forward that to us, if that's possible, to the committee members, so we can look at it before the next meeting.
Mr. Wagner, we check with Mr. Leslie and work with him on it.
Thank you.
Okay, negotiations, we're going to meet in executive session, have some important discussions, but I do want to make just one short comment. I really want to thank the members of the negotiations committee, and specifically Dave Gustanian, who's here from the Andover Board of Finance, and Mal Lecter from the Hebron Board of Finance, who sat through with us and stayed there for the long haul. Each and every one of you that was there. I think the final meeting that we had, we closed at 1:15 a.m. I'm glad to say that I got up at 4 to leave for work, and got there at 8. So, but in any event, besides that, but I really want to thank everybody for their work and their participation, and including the opposite side. I shouldn't say the opposite side, but the representatives from the CEA and everyone who was there. Just to be there that long just shows that there's a lot of care and importance in what needed to be done, and everybody went the distance to do what needed to be done that night. So, that's my comments. The rest of it will take care of the negotiations. So that moves us to the next item, which is athletic and extracurricular activities. Did they meet?
We didn't have a meeting, Ken. Wasn't a report.
And finance, audit, compliance, and insurance. And this is one we talked about early on in the meeting, and I'm not sure how the dates got transposed for the meetings. I know that we originally had a forum scheduled for the 8th, a public forum that we were going to do, but I think after we had the final forum with the budget committee heads, I think there was just having a general meeting with the public to talk about the roles and responsibilities of board members. We decided at that point it wasn't a good use of time for the board, so we had the 8th blocked off, which wasn't convenient, and then I sent out an email about the 9th and the 10th. I don't know how I got it on my schedule, on my calendar. I know it came out as the 10th. Kathy had it as the 10th. Kevin and I showed up at the 9th, and then when I looked at it, it was the 10th. So, again, my sincere apologies. In the years that I've been here, it's never happened before. All the meetings have been picked on dates. I know I sent out an email requesting the date, so again, nothing took place that was any decision-making. Basically, what we did, I had Jane and Bob present everything tonight, actually in more depth, set the groundwork to give you everything tonight, and we'll have it in our next meeting. So shame on me for the mistake. It falls on my watch. So again, normally what we do is I'll call Bob and say, Bob, what meetings do we have available in the next few weeks? And then I ask Kathy, can you get a date? So, and Kathy did do that. How I ended up with the 9th, and why Kevin followed me here the same way. He showed up, we were at the wrong date, in the right place, wrong time. And then, so my apologies for that, but hopefully tonight we've given you everything and then some of what was discussed, at least, or the questions that you all have been sharing in the meetings and with us, to make sure that we get the type of financial reporting, questions about the audit. That's no secret. Jane is in the middle of the audit. She has some reports that have to get done by the 31st that go to the state. Is that correct, Jane?
They're supposed to have their audit done by December 31st.
Right.
If there's a possibility, they may be asking for an extension.
Okay.
It's taking them longer because they're trying to recreate
Everything that previous auditor
everything
did.
from a prior auditor and have spent more time with the auditors than I care to spend with, like 6 hours straight. Their eyes are glossing over them. But I think they're getting what they're asking for. Sometimes it's a little difficult to find it, but, so.
And then the issue of insurance is the document that we all received for the first time tonight. That's actually going to be on the next agenda. If there is a discussion item for that, but your feedback on the insurance consortium document or language, please, zip that to Bob and, any thoughts you have on that, because that's something we'll have to be dealing with soon. So that's it for finance, and I promise I will follow and make sure I get a right date next time and make sure I get it on my calendar. So my apologies for any mix-up there. That takes us to the student reports. I don't see the students on this tonight.
That's the kids.
It's too bad.
Couldn't send them out.
Homework?
Homework, yeah.
Wanted to stand up and tell you about it again.
Facilitators, Educational Foundation, Dieter's not here. East Con, Judy or Amy, did you?
No, I just wanted to, there's another report in our packet, this one, and I just wanted to comment, if that's okay, it's the
Oh, sure.
curriculum instruction. I just wanted to comment that this is a great report, and I really appreciate it. This is the curriculum
Law report,
instruction,
curriculum
instruction
Yeah.
assessment,
Oh,
yeah.
instructional technology report.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I just thought it was great, and I would like to see if the principals could do something similar to us, for us once a month.
I like the report a lot too. Yeah.
Facilitators, as I mentioned, Educational Foundation, Dieter's not here. East Con, Judy?
Nothing today.
Kevin Cave?
Gabe is quiet in December, but January 14th will be the Cave Area 3 Legislative Breakfast. That'll be at Rockville High School. Any and all of our board members are welcome to attend. It runs from 7:30 to 9 in the morning. This is when Cave gets together state senators and representatives for the towns in that area. So we happen to be part of Area 3 to engage in some conversation about what's coming up in the upcoming legislative session, specifically around educational issues, as well as the opportunity to talk with our peer superintendents and other board members about what's happening.
Brings us to the chairperson's report. I'm sure looking at you, if you could pass those that way. Kevin, if you could share this way. The first item that I want to mention is, wait, I'll give you one. There's two. Or did I give you enough? Okay. I'll give one back. This is, there have been a number of board members and probably the majority of us who have asked about improving the sound system for our meetings. And I guess Bob, based on the request that we've had, has gone out to price the cost to have a meeting sound system added to the room. So, Bob, did you have anything to comment on this? I mean, I know it's the chairperson's report, but it is a cost, it's an expense.
Minimum will be included in the next budget.
Right, okay, for next year. Okay. So if there's any questions about that, there's the cost to do that, at least the summary of the cost. I mentioned the mix-up on the finance committee. My apologies. I'll be happy to talk to anyone about how that happened, but I really don't know. The fourth item is, I guess Bob had reported to me that I think Dieter is he resigning from the board or has resigned?
Has resigned. That's the last word I received.
It's unfortunate he's not here because, we recently attended the CABE conference. They had everyone stand up based on the number of years you've given the board service. And when they got to 20 and plus or 20 and higher, I think he was one of maybe 2 or 3 in a room of hundreds of people that were standing up for 20 to 25 years of board service. And so I wish, or at least I'll hope, or I'll talk to the board members of a way that we can maybe recognize Dieter's service. And I'm not sure what the next steps are or whatever, but I think there's, for that type of commitment for that long, I think, you know, there needs to be some recognition by the board and the community just to thank for that kind of leadership and perseverance for that long in this capacity. So, you know, as I hear more, I'll share it with the board members. I haven't heard anything officially, but that's at least what we, you know, what Bob has reported to me. And then, as usual, if you have any thoughts on committee assignments, any other committees you want to change, just let me know, because we'll have to address that too as well. So if there's any committees you'd like to be on or come off of or whatever, let me know so we can address those. All right. That brings us to action item number 8, approval of the minutes. I need a motion to accept the minutes of the 11/17/2014 regular meeting, enclosure 8.1A, special meeting of November 19, 2014, enclosure 8.1B, and the special meeting of November 20, 2014, which is enclosure 8.1C.
So moved.
A motion made by Kevin, is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Amy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of acceptance of the minutes as noted in the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. It's Judy. Okay, let's see, personnel actions, item number 8.2. I'd like a motion that the Regional School District Number 8 Board of Education accept the resignation of Elizabeth Calderoni effective January 5th, 2015.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Amy, is there a second? Second by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, accepting the resignation of Elizabeth Calderoni, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, 8.3, December reports. Make a motion to receive and file the following reports. Levy payment schedule 8.3A, cash flow reports 8.3B, monthly financial reports 8.3C, student activity report 8.3D, special education report 8.3E, student discipline report 8.3F, cafeteria report 8.3G, sick day report 8.3H, curriculum instruction assessment and instructional technology report 8.31 with applause.
So moved.
Motion made by Kevin, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Any discussion?
Without having the details in the object report that have been requested, I don't think we could really get a handle on where we are in the budget. So for that reason, I am going to vote no on accepting the report.
Thank you, Rich. Anyone else?
I just have a question.
Yep.
One of the line items was social work, which we've exhausted funding for. Can you elaborate on what that is? Social work. We've exhausted the funding for social work.
What it is mainly is that we contract with AHM to provide the social workers, and we usually pay them in one lump sum with no further expenditures from that line item.
So we can still use them.
They're ours through the end of the year. It's just that the cash flow that works for AHM. That's what we pay that way. But no, they're with us, and really, we couldn't do without us.
Thank you.
I do have one question. I think it was under 8.3D unless I wrote the numbers down, but there was, there's a note in the report that says there's a notable negative balance in the special education tuition account in the amount of $112,751. Says the excess cost and agency placement grant reimbursement is still unknown at this time. My question is it the amount or the timing or both that is unknown?
It's the amount right now, and I haven't seen anything that's coming in that gives us an estimate, so.
Okay,
but-
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Right.
No opposed?
I
Any
oppose.
abstention? Two oppositions, two. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Brings us to item 8.4, November reports. Make a motion to receive and file the following documents: the levy payment schedule 8.4A, cash flow 8.4B, monthly financial report 8.4C, student activity report 8.4D, special education report 8.4E,
student discipline report, COJA 8.4F, cafeteria report 8.4G, sick day report 8.4H, curriculum instruction assessment and instructional technology report 8.4I. So moved. Motion made by Kevin, is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the reports included in November and item 8.4, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. 2 nays. Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. That brings us to item 8.5, second reading of policies. Is there a first reading?
No first readings tonight, just second and third. So for second reading, I'd like to make a motion that we approve as presented in the board packet enclosure 8.5, confidentiality and access to education records, policy 5125, bullying behavior in schools, policy 5129, administration of student medications in the schools, policy 5141.1, curricular exemptions, policy 6205, minutes, policy 9341, and board notifications, policy 9420.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Joe. Discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
On 5125, Kevin, this is just I'm not sure if it's just a typo or whatever, but on section G, the board will comply with the written request within 5 and then right after it 10. Are we keeping both? I'm assuming we're eliminating the 5. But it's not.
What page on 5125?
Page 5 here.
Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, page 5.
You're taking out.
Correct, yeah, 5 should have been underlined as being removed, 10 is replacing 5.
Okay, and on 5141.1 on page 7, section F, subsection II, a physician licensed to practice medicine under chapter 370. To practice medicine is underlined to be removed. I'm just looking for consistency because section B, which is an optometrist, that language remains.
Wait a second, 5141, page
7.
7. Okay, and which section?
F.
Section F. Yep, section F, part 2, right?
Yes.
Communication physician licensed. The challenge with that is that's actually direct wording to match the state statute. So where that's not consistent, it's not consistent in the state statute language as well.
Okay. Section 3.
Okay.
Medication is administered under the approval by the school nurse and school medical advisor, comma, in any, comma, in conjunction with, blah, blah, blah. What is that in any doing there?
I was wondering if that was supposed to be an if, because I kind of flagged it too.
Communication.
It may be an if any, like if you have a school medical
Yeah, it's
advisor.
different.
Correct, that should be if any. So, yeah, section F, item 3, the bolded type change into F. Thanks, Kathy.
All right, section number 6205. And it's the first page, under written request for mandatory exemption. Parents who wish to exercise such exemptions must notify the school district in writing within the first 2 weeks of school. I'm wondering why we need to be that concrete in the first 2 weeks of school. If someone transfers or if, somebody changes their mind or whatever, that's the only opportunity they have to opt out of a dissection or, you know what I mean? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that it would have to be the first 2 weeks.
First quarter, because we began the first quarter, and that's why that language is in there. Because if we're starting those units during the first quarter, first semester, and parents want their children out of there, we need to know quickly, so we don't put them in those programs.
And also because, again, that matches CGS 1016 and the language the state authorizes in terms of planning.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. Dissection, it's not like you're doing dissection the first week or even the second week. It may wait until later in the course.
I'm sorry?
Dissection in particular, that is not something that you would immediately,
I'd have to, I don't remember the curriculum, I'd have to look at when the teachers begin it. If it's the health unit, I'm not sure the order in which they teach it, and that's why that's been there.
is this modeled after a state mandate?
It is.
It is.
It's Connecticut General Statute 1060.
Okay, 9341. Number 5, section 5, it says, the new language, however, the board shall not be required by law to post such minutes.
Worry about the law.
I think what you meant to say is by law.
By policy.
Or, yeah, by policy or.
Yeah, we can't say by law because we can't conflict with the law.
Right. So I think that needs to be kind of worked a little more.
Should we say by board policy?
I'd rather you table that one, or, I make a motion to withdraw that one from the,
Well, we're not in a motion, and Kevin agrees to just take it out.
technically you do, but.
Well, it could be a friendly.
Friendly amendment to it is fine to pull 9341 from the list, so you're asking for a friendly amendment, which I accept. All right, so 9341 will come out.
Okay, next, 9420.
Yep.
And in that one, I would just request that we put a time frame around the timing. It basically says that the superintendent shall forward to the board copies of all information, but it doesn't really give a time frame.
So in policy, when we talked about this, what we talked about is that the timing should be part of the administrative regs as opposed to policy, because the administration should be able to say, I know what my resources are, I know how much time it's going to take for me to turn stuff around. We definitely want them to define SLAs for the board, and we've talked about that, so those should be clearly communicated. But rather than have it be in a policy that the board then has to turn around if the superintendent comes back and says, well, you reduced my staff by X, now I've got to change the SLA, let it be part of the administrative regs as opposed to policy, in terms of how quickly they do it.
So, this is saying that the superintendent shall forward all board copies of all information related to the following FOI requests. So, I'm gonna get all requests, like, from newspapers of what's being provided to the newspaper? Because I don't know that I want that. Like, I mean, as, we're gonna get all the paperwork. Doesn't it make sense that we would request it if we're interested in it? I mean, I can see the point in saying the Harper Currents requested all the information on, I don't know,
And
or whatever.
anything that has to be produced, right?
I don't think, I don't know that we want copies of it all.
Pending litigation, FOI, they might influence some of the decisions you're making. That's why it's not an issue to send them out, because they usually come out, I usually try to send them out in the weekly information that I send you. So it's just a question of listing them and copying them and sending them to you.
And they're coming electronically as opposed to in print, so.
But if FOI requests, like, you're suggesting that you're gonna send us all the copies of, if the Harper Current asks for some of these salaries, like, salary reports, like, is that
No,
what you're
somebody sends me a letter saying, look, I would, under the FOI Freedom of Information statute, I would request the following information.
You're just sending us that letter?
I'll send you that.
What
letter.
they're asking for, but
Thank
not
you.
necessarily the actual content.
Thank you.
If you want the content as a board member, you can certainly FOI it, we can get it directly.
You don't even have to, because it's public information.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Is that it?
So can we clarify that, can we clarify that, say, that policy? Because it's not, I don't think it's clear. We're not gonna get all information.
For requests.
Well, can I just, make a friendly amendment to pull this one and we can talk about it? The wording.
Sure, we'll pull 9420 off.
Makes it quick. Okay. So, any further discussion on 8.5?
Yes. on 5141, it's a general question, is what is our policy when it comes to things like at-will or et cetera? We used to bring this up during reports, but we suspended someone for 10 days.
10 days.
For
Possession of an illegal item, excedrin, or leave. It's in the report, because I actually read it and I have it pasted
Yeah.
into my minutes, because I wanted to ask the same question.
that seems very, very excessive.
Well, but Rich, I need to caution you, two things. One, we don't know the facts of the
Mhm.
case, so I guess the question should be in generalities. I think it should be, not specific to that instance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
because my question was along those lines. I mean, is this the standard penalty for a student who is in possession of an over-the-counter Aleve or Motrin? No? Okay. Thank you.
I'm just scanning now, see if I can find it. You can keep going with your next question while I'm looking.
The minutes, that's the 9241.
Which,
Yeah.
no, we pulled that, we're not gonna.
I can't talk about it right now, but.
We can talk about it, you can bring up whatever you want to talk about, but we're not gonna.
9341 will pull out, 9420 come out.
Correct.
For further discussion.
The subject found in 9241, if we're gonna go changing this policy, then we should be putting in there that we will put the minutes on the website.
Okay.
Not
Well,
here,
well,
no.
let me ask this question to Kathy. Kathy, when you send out the agenda for the board, you post the board and normally our previous meeting minutes that haven't been approved yet are pending approval with all the other attachments are on the
The entire
website.
packet is on the website.
So they go to the website?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're there for the public.
Yes.
Okay, so they're
And
actually
then the
going.
approved minutes go with the agendas, plus the entire packet is in the next, another
In the
section.
next other section. So they are going to the board, and the question just becomes timing of when we do it, right? Is that
Well,
pretty much what this is?
I'm not sure why we're actually even changing the policy.
Okay.
Why we're going through all this effort, but we're gonna open it up, and then let's make it a requirement.
Well, that's fine. We'll share your comments or with Kevin has them. and
The
policy
only,
guys together.
the only thing I want to check on, because again, I just want to be cognizant of what the administration feels is reasonable, is timing requirements. So legally, we have requirements of posting things publicly under certain deadlines. And,
7 days.
right, ideally, you could post something on the web that fast. I don't know if there are, technology issues that can come up, particularly during summer months, but, all right. It's coming off anyway, but we will definitely tackle that before you see it again.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote on 8.5, second reading of policies with the exclusion or taking out of 9341 and 9420, which would just leave 5125, 5129, 5141.1, and 6205. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes as amended, I guess.
Okay, and then that brings us to
8.6.
third reading. All right, so under third reading, I'd like to make a motion that we approve policy, security and safety plan policy 1450, volunteers 1455, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of students 4153 and 4253, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of adults with an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder 4154 and 4254, family medical leave 4175 and 4275, and school attendance 5112.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Amy. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Mike? Oh, no, sorry.
And 4175 is the family and medical leave. And Kevin, correct me, maybe it's state statute again if this was copied from there. But I was just curious as to why we needed to include extra wording for employee spouse, including same-sex marriages.
Yeah, that's direct from state statute. That's revisions that the state legislature has made.
I don't understand why they need to, I mean, a spouse by definition is either a member of a married pair. Why do they have to specifically point that out?
I think given honestly, it's a political thing. I think given I agree with you, I understand what you're saying, that same-sex marriage is a recognized marriage status in the state of Connecticut, but the legislature has deemed that they want to call that out specifically in this policy. I mean, for what purpose, I don't know, but that's,
Okay, as long as it's the state, I thought it might have been our language, I could.
no, that's definitely state language.
It's like saying all pets are allowed at this hotel.
Yep. Oh, I get it.
Makes sense, but okay.
Any other
Other questions, Danny?
That's it.
Okay, Rich?
Two questions. On the 1450, on the security and safety plan, should the board be approving the plan?
What's your question?
We don't have, there's an option to send it to the board, but there is no requirement to send it to the board, nor is there any requirement for the board to read it or approve it.
That would be a decision we would make as a board. In essence, the state doesn't require it. We certainly can include it in our policy. We can be more restrictive than the state. That's not a problem, but that would be a decision of this board on whether we want to include that or not.
So what you're saying, Rich, is that you're suggesting that it include the board approving the plan?
Yes, that would be one of the options. Is this an important thing for the board? I mean, we've been talking about security, and this is a big one.
What? 14%? 14%?
It's right here.
Basically, the statute is introduced, so we have to put a policy in that says we will create the plan. We'll create and implement an all-hazard school security and safety plan to bolster our existing emergency preparedness response capability and school safety and security measures to best meet all hazard threats. Right now, the language is that we will create the plan, but, I mean, to Rich's point, the way it's worded right now, that plan can be created by the administration and handed to the board and said, that's our plan, we filed it, this is the plan that we have.
Or not even handed to the board.
So,
Maybe that's just a compromise, it's just required to be.
It says each individual school plan shall be kept securely and only will be provided to the Board of Education. But I think we should be approving it.
Well, doesn't it say on the first paragraph that the board is going to create and implement?
Yeah. That's fine.
yeah, the board is creating it.
Yeah, so, I mean, is the board going to create this? Do we have the latitude to do that?
Do we have the pieces?
By statute, we have to, because that's the state language.
Is that the language to do it, or is the language to approve it?
So this, each school operating under the jurisdiction of Regional School District Number 8 Board of Education will create. So it's basically, it's not us creating it the way it's worded now. The way it's worded now is that each school under our district, which is so middle school, high school, will have a respective all hazard school security and safety plan. So that plan has to be created. My bet is that the state's going to require that those plans be referenced to the state that they are in place. But there's nothing in here that specifically says that the board creates it, that the board reviews it, that the board approves it. It's just that it has to be created by the schools under our purview.
Now I'm a little confused, but that's all right. I'm just trying to understand, you're saying we have to create it, but you're saying we're
No.
not.
Schools operating under our jurisdiction, so it has to be created by the schools.
Well, so the schools are created, not the board.
Correct. The way it's worded.
Okay, schools operating under the, okay, I got it now.
Got it.
Sorry, I'm a little slow. Okay. So what's the concern now? What do we-
I'll make a motion that we add language in there to require board approval.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
I think don't we have to remove this and
Should we take it out, bring it back?
Taking all the others out instead of.
Yeah, why don't we
Well,
do it?
if we don't agree on that, then there's no reason to take it out.
I don't think it's not a.
No,
I think
the
it's
point's
too
gonna be,
negative.
your point is made relative to the language that you want, but that language should be reviewed by council, make sure it's gonna pass muster, so.
No, I'm not saying we should actually do this. If we agree to make the change, then we table it, and then you work on it.
All right. For policies purposes, straw poll, how many would be in favor of having language that requires board approval of the all-hazard school security and safety plan? 4, 5, 6, that's enough. All right. So I'm going to pull back 1450.
Could we ask the administration's opinion on that, see if we're not thinking of something?
Yeah, but I would say this is, we can do that in the policy conversation. So I'm gonna pull 1450 from the motion. Okay, additional questions?
My big one is on 1455. I definitely can't approve it the way it is, because it should be trying to encourage volunteerism. This policy specifically discourages our faculty, our grown-up faculty, from volunteering on their own time to help the school life.
So what he's talking about is the paragraph that says, no employee of regional school district number 8's public school shall serve as a volunteer in any capacity except as may be approved by the superintendent and or his/her designee based on the specific situation. Bob and I have talked to that. Bob, can you explain the rationale?
It becomes a question of Fair Labor Standards Act. You could be a parent and say, I want to volunteer to cover this class. But conceivably, if that's part of your duties, you could come back at me later and say, I should have been paid for that. That's why we're asking for some sort of acknowledgement. If you want to volunteer to do it, and it's related to your job, you need some sort of clearance, because I'm just trying to protect us against someone saying, look, you forced me to do the work for nothing. And,
I understand the concerns, but this goes way beyond that. This means that if a coach wants to rake a field between innings, he has to ask your permission. It means if a teacher wants to stay and help a student pass the hours, they have to ask your permission.
No, not really, because the staying after hours is with the teacher is a normal thing. It's when it's related to your specific job. If you've got a custodian to say, I'm going to volunteer to rake the infield, that could be construed as forcing him to do it, and I would end up with an issue before the labor board and say, why didn't you pay him for doing that? Because that's part of his normal duties.
So why don't we change the word and provide that protection in, but put the burden on the employee to make that.
No, you have to leave that you have to leave that gatekeeper as the superintendent, because you could back yourself into a Fair Labor Standards or whatever wage claim, and it would, and I'm not sure, I don't know the specific damages, but I've had a few of those claims go through.
Danny, isn't this is titled community? What does that have to do with, this has nothing to do with working in the school. It's talking about the community. It's titled 1,000
Because
community.
it talks about an employee, not the community.
Well, why is it titled community?
That's not what I'm talking about. This specific clause refers to an employee.
I understand that, but this section 1,000 is community. Has nothing to do with work related.
You have to think about the way the term community is defined. Community is not talking specifically about community as in I'm doing something for the town of Hebron, the town of Andover, or whatever. This is a community. RHAM is Regional School District number 8 is a community. If you look at the bulk of the language, again, state statute driven, they've really clamped down on the language that has to be in policy relative to volunteers and the screening processes they go through, and making sure that school districts don't end up having somebody volunteer in a situation where there could be, a sexual offender status that could, create issues, those types of things. So they put some very scripted language in there.
This would have prevented, we had the softball coach out there helping cut sod out of the baseball games. That would have prevented him from doing it without seeking prior approval.
Yeah. And
He didn't know he was going to do it until that morning.
And approval's a problem. Why is approval a problem?
As long as he's willing to answer his phone 24 hours, 7 days a week.
So do you have a situation where this has become a problem?
No, because we don't have it in our policy.
But nor should you be in a situation where the softball coach can be twisted into being the groundskeeper full-time either.
And not only that, you may end up with an employee who may feel that they're getting undue pressure from outside sources to do some stuff that they may not be comfortable doing, and they're in a situation where they may be asked to rake a field and they may not want to do it, but they do it anyway.
Put that in the policy then.
Well, you are, by having the superintendent give the approval for it.
Or does it
That way,
give-
that person can go to the superintendent and say, look, I want to do this and volunteer my time, and the superintendent can talk to them and they can agree, and then they'll do it.
Or designate, does that mean it would be always the superintendent, or would it be the principal?
I don't, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why I'm not hearing this, but I mean, you have two
We're putting
professionals.
red tape.
You have two professionals.
Well, let's back up, okay? Except as may be approved by the superintendent and his or her designee. So superintendent has the right to say, you know what, if it's an athletics related issue, I'm gonna put it on the hands of my AD or whatever. They have the ability, the superintendent has the authority to say, if it's something that requires a different level of flexibility, I'm gonna assign that authority to somebody that can review it. But I think that review is critical.
And I don't think, we had that big cleanup day, we had a number of teachers out there helping. They would have had to ask permission, every single one of them, ahead of time.
Everybody had to ask permission actually ahead of time, if you recall.
No, they didn't.
Oh, yeah, we had lots of meetings on that. There were lots of discussions. The superintendent was involved with getting approvals to get everything done and coordinated so it could happen, so that everything from an organizational standpoint followed things that needed to be taken care of from an administrative standpoint. You can't just...
People
Okay.
could come, sign up the form.
Okay, so vote no. Vote no. Joe, you voted no. Any other questions?
I really would like to know, besides, is there an underlying issue really here that why we're adding this language? Is this because of the...
That question came up in the policy committee. I specifically forwarded to legal counsel, and legal counsel recommended that it stay in the policy because of the potential liability of the board under the Fair Labor Standards Act. And that's the only reason it's there, because believe me, I don't want to go making work for myself, but on the other hand, I don't want to have to spend a good deal of time before the labor board justifying that so-and-so volunteered, and he wasn't forced to do it. That's the only reason it's there, because I specifically asked counsel, why is this there?
In reality, though, this isn't gonna prevent that from happening.
I think this language is protective of the board.
Correct.
I do.
Why would it protect? They still can come back and say, the superintendent pressured me to do that volunteer work.
No, because,
But I think there's a gatekeeper. So the superintendent or designee, as someone pointed out, could be the athletic director, whomever, they would be viewing it through that lens that, okay, this is appropriate, or they would just have additional information. I think it's just wise, and I mean, one of our jobs is always to be protective of the board and the community. And
I make a motion that we withdraw 1455.
I won't accept that amendment, so you can make a motion, but
Do Is there a second?
I second it.
motion made by Joe, so we have a motion to
withdraw.
withdraw, no, is there a motion to, no, it's to eliminate it, or that particular clause, or is it to remove the policy?
Remove that clause.
Okay, it's the clause.
So it's an amendment, so it's a proposed amendment to the motion to eliminate the superintendent, the line,
No employee of the
no
regional school
employee of the
district.
regional school district.
Yeah, it's, let me just check it here. 1, 2, 3, it's paragraph 4.
Okay.
It's presented.
Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment to exclude that paragraph 4 from the proposed policy, which one is it again?
1455.
1455. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion fails. That brings us back to the original motion. Okay, all those in favor of acceptance of the third reading of policies, with the exception of 1450 safety and security plan, which is being pulled out, which leaves 1455 volunteers, 4153, 4253 reports of suspected abuse or neglect of students, 4154, 4254 reports of suspected abuse or neglect of adults with intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder, and 4175, 4275 family medical leave, 5112 school attendance enclosure, all noted in enclosure 8.6. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any two opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. 8.7, discussion and possible action regarding the school resource officer. Hey, Bob, you want to go through what you prepared for us? Sure.
What I've got in front of you, what I've presented to you this evening is some information relative to the SRO. First is an agreement, a sample agreement that was prepared by Shipman and Goodwin, and what I did was I tried to localize the agreement. A copy of the agreement that exists between the town of Colchester and the Colchester Police. The cost of the resource officer for 2014-15 and 2015-16 is prepared by the Hebron Finance Office. And then the cost of a vehicle, and then just some other information, daily salary in 102 days left until the close of school, 102 school days left in the year after January 1st.
How many school days are there in total?
180. There's 186 for staff, 180 for students.
Then the math doesn't add up. You got 237.60 per day times 180 is not going to give you 62,003.
No, what I did is I just took they had figured the annual salary.
Right, but the breakout doesn't work then. You're saying the daily salary is 237. How did you base that number then?
There's a $20,000 difference. I'm wondering if that's the inclusion of the benefits?
It's 62,000 divided by 261.
Right, so what's that 261?
What's the 261?
That's the way historically we figured work day, work week.
But
There's only
full-time
100
people is 261.
What was that?
Full-year people, it's 261.
261 days.
We would need them for that amount.
Well, I think that one of the reasons we did it that way is we figured that we had to include any vacation time, any professional development time that was going to be required. Those were the things that we were looking at. That obviously could be modified. Because we know that there has to be professional development time, and we also know that someone's going to earn vacation time.
That's 81 days. If I'm my math is correct.
So if that's the case, we would be encumbered for $24,235 for the remainder of this school year if we started after the recess.
Well, and that's 102 school days, and that depends on when school would end, because again, there might be some issues of accrued vacation time during the year, and there would be an additional cost for that. should any professional development be scheduled at that time? That's why it's kind of, I can't pin it down because I don't know exactly what the working conditions would be.
Well, that's where it's difficult to work with these numbers, because, there's 180 days, physical days, but we're basing it on 261 virtual days. I'm not sure what that 260 again really represents. So is he working over the summer when school
And that's,
ends?
again, that's why we figured in vacation time and professional development during the summer, whatever that would be.
Can
Yeah, go ahead.
we had speaker from, I don't remember the,
Colchester.
no, from, Voices for Children, and they provided us examples of, or suggestions for best practice, but it's not reflected in any of the documents that you provided us. I think actually this is just a copy of the documents that you might have provided us before we met with, we had the forum. So I'm wondering about whether that was maybe just not considered, or why it's not integrated or embedded into this document that you've just given to us.
The document that I've given you was Shipman's version of it. I indicated that it could be modified. Again, this was just a draft document that Mr. Brochu had given me. And what I did is I tried to fill in the blanks and to try to give you what was what the attorneys would want to see in the document, and how it could be modified is a process of negotiations and a process of policy decision.
So, Bob, I had a couple, I'm sorry, did you have another question?
I guess I was just gonna follow up with the fact that, if you were presenting us a document, and you were inserting things, that I would have liked to see the insertion of some of the best practices that were discussed at the forum into this document that you're presenting, that we would be voting on tonight.
Well, I can tell you this, my thought was on this was not to be voting on the document itself, it was to whether or not we want to authorize the superintendent to begin negotiating that agreement or a form of that agreement back to the board for approval. So what I would, or unless somebody else wanted to move otherwise, is I would be asking for a motion to authorize the superintendent to begin negotiations with Hebron to get to a document. And then we would approve that once he was able to, because we would have to ratify it before then, it would have probably to go to Hebron Board of Selectmen to approve after that. So, Bob, just a couple of the comments that I noted. One was, we did talk about the possibility of the traffic safety coordination and whatever resource they could be to us enhancing traffic safety on campus. I didn't see that in any of the responsibilities. I missed it.
Again, I just tried to keep this.
No, understood. I'm just, and I'll send these to you. I didn't see, unless I missed it, but the perform a yearly physical security review and report, one school per year. I think that was another item that, at least, that was discussed that was in the Colchester agreement, and I think a number of board members thought would have great value in a physical security review. There's a comment in there about participating in lockdown drills, but I know we do those drills and they would obviously be part of that. I don't know if it has to be spelled out. I think another one that was missing was attend as needed expulsion hearings and staff orientation. I'll break those out for you and send them to you. Thoughts?
A couple.
Yeah.
For one, cost-wise, so the car is about $4,800.
Those are the ones that are received from the finance department.
Depreciation and gas is all we gotta pay.
I'm sorry?
We have to pay, we just have to pay depreciation and gas for the car?
That's what I was given.
Okay, and any training costs?
Well, I think that there are two types of training, one that would be required by the police and one that we would require this person to have.
Yeah. There's a comment in the agreement about the NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officer Training.
But, and also in the agreement, I think, you know, it says that the police chief selects the SRO officer. You know, I don't think the board should be interviewing the SRO officers, but I think we should have final approval. There's a point in time, Scott could probably tell you the date, in May 2008, when 9 students were arrested. We had a school resource officer back then, and we all say, geez, we want a school resource officer. But, you know, on that day, it didn't work.
Well, I think what we might want to do on that point is talk to the attorney that did the present, or should have go and give us their thoughts on that. 'Cause I think there were some legal issues over who's hiring and who's supervising and who's getting direction. So I think there may be some, I think there should be some input from the board. I don't know if it should be approval because they're technically the employer. I don't know.
Well, we agree with the selection, whatever work they want to come up with.
Right.
Because, you know, we're talking, you know, the people we had out here, they sounded like very good, experienced people, but that may not always be the case.
Rich? I have a number of concerns. One, on the agreement itself. There was a specification about an emergency, but it wasn't detailed. You know, what classifies as emergency for our RCO to go off-site to deal with traffic stops, or, you know, how often are they going to be off-site for this type of thing? And it's not clearly defined. So I have a big concern there. I think that was brought up at the last meeting by, I forget, so that concern. The cost of a car is only $3,489 a year. I find that hard to believe that we're going to have access to that car. And are we going to have that access to the car, because it's not in that agreement. So I don't think that's specified, the use or the cost. Cost seems very low. I reiterate the I agree with the approval section. I definitely think either the board or Dr. Selinsky should have some say into who we allow into our school for that position. I'm concerned with the contract where it refers to each RCO, implying that there's more than one, implying that there's one for the middle school and one for the high school. And I'm not sure what does that mean, if we're going to have multiple ones part-time a day, or I'm not sure what all those were in the document. Summer definitely needs to be outlined. That's a lot of time when the school is not in session. I also thought the document was law enforcement centric, and I didn't think that was the direction that we wanted to go with RCO. That it was much more about the education and getting to know the students, and it wasn't necessarily the law enforcement portion. Those are the specific things in the agreement. I have a major concern with the fact that we're trying to get the RCO without having the conversation on the whole safety and security of the school and identifying what problem we're trying to fix. We had that report that mentioned a few other things, you know, locks, signs on the rooms for outside the windows. We haven't had any of that discussion. And we're pushing the RCO through. You know, yes, the RCO would be a great asset, but it costs money. And we need to make an intelligent decision that that's where we want to spend the money. But we've got to have the conversation on the other stuff. And then on the other thing is, until the budget right now is for, you know, when I started looking through these object budgets, we're over in some areas. And we need to get that budget settled up before we start spending, make any commitments of this type of money for a new position that will not, that we can easily survive without. That's the wrong choice of words. But we're adding a new position. Do we need to do it now? Not necessarily. But I think all these other questions should be asked and answered before we make a commitment of this. And you know this is going to be over 60, or go over 60,000 by the time it's done a year. And so that's my thoughts.
Anyone else?
I'm just gonna come back and kind of my tie-in to Amy's and Rich's point. I think when we look at the objectives of the SRO program, to Rich's point, it is very law enforcement centric in terms of the way we've articulated it. I think what evolved out of that conversation in the forum, it's not articulated here, is one, establishing positive relationships between the community here at RHAM and law enforcement professionals. It's establishing that positive relationship between the organizations, and a healthy sense of both acknowledgement and respect. I think that there's a reflection here in terms of, it's reflected that we're looking for, some education in terms of promoting positive attitudes regarding the police role in society, and educating, in terms of law enforcement's role in preventing disruptive and violent behaviors. But I also think there's an element that's not reflected here in terms of assisting students in making positive choices in their lives. Because I think there are things that fall short of that disruptive or violent behavior that are still not necessarily legally compliant behavior.
So let me ask one question to make this easy. Do we authorize the superintendent to begin negotiations to come up with an agreement that the board would eventually approve the idea of adding a school resource officer? Or are we saying no at this time until there's more work to be done? My only concern in this thing is that a lot of time and a lot of effort is going to have to be put together with attorneys negotiating documents, getting agreements. There's going to be, everyone's going to have their comments, everyone's going to want points included, more meetings and more time. My question is, do we put the administration through this ringer to do this and get the work done, or is the general consensus that we don't want a school resource officer? Please.
I'm trying to listen to what people are saying, and I thought I saw some of those things in here when I read, and I just started a few more. I know I highlighted things when I initially read, but if people have the agreement on page 4, C1, it said to assist in educating students as to the role of police in our society and other law enforcement, crime prevention, recognition of substance, driver safety, gang violence. Then 3 was to serve as a positive role model and mentor. So the role model and mentor, I think, were some of those more positive things. 13, adapt and maintain a visible, motivated, I thought motivated, and then proactive was the next word, approach to crime, but not just crime, school problems. 15, I thought, when I read it anyway, I thought that it was weaving at least a little bit of what was discussed that night about disciplining students is a school responsibility. So saying that is not, the SRO is not, the SRO is not the school disciplinarian. Then there was a breakdown about that they would meet with the principals and take direction there, that there would be regular meetings. I thought a lot of those things actually were considered. So I mean, maybe, maybe, I don't even know, it would be helpful to me to hear if specifically where people didn't see that in here.
For me, Judy, I think they're covered tactically, like those literal line by line, this is what you will do.
Okay.
Where it's not getting reflected is in the strategic level, the objectives of the program, the higher, there's a disconnect between the objectives as cited and what we're tactically asking somebody to do.
But what I'm hearing, what my concern is that do we get to that next stage, say this is the direction we want to go, to set up all these standard operating procedures and goals and objectives of the program, which is secondary to the agreement, because that has to be formed, and then the agreement has to be reflected those things that are your responsibility to do.
It's a lot of work involved. Yeah, Tom?
Well, when we had that meeting with the law enforcement personnel, I mean, to secure the school, to make it safe, you're gonna have to get an SRO in here first, really, and pick his brain and let him tell you how you're gonna, we're not experts at that, all right, to make it secure. We would rely on whoever the SRO person is, and his expertise. Now, like David said, he's gonna be trained. All this stuff, I think the gentleman, if we got one, is gonna know all this already, because he's already been trained. We're not gonna train him. He's already been trained, all right? And by the voices I hear here, we're kind of putting the security and the safety of the students on the back burner. All right, that's the feeling I'm getting, if we're gonna keep postponing this, because it's gonna take a while. But you gotta get a gentleman in here and educate us, all of us in school, how you can make it safe.
Dan? So moved.
Motion made by Mike to authorize the superintendent to negotiate with the town of Beekman to bring back an agreement on the scope to the board for approval.
Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Kevin. Any discussion?
Yeah, for discussion, I think there's been some good points. I think back to page 2, under goals, the education and counseling, I think might be a good one there. And Kevin, I think you have an important point. Maybe it might be a good idea to put a D in under objectives to get some of those pieces, the more positive pieces, as an objective.
Yeah, and that's why I second the motion, because I'm not against moving forward with getting this language moving forward, getting things cleaned up, and getting to a decision to move forward, is, you know.
But I don't want to have this administration go through 6 months of work of putting all this together. I want to make sure we're all on page to allow them to do it.
You know, and there's things that might have turned out a little different last year if you had a school resource officer, but, you know, and I think Bob's got all our comments on the agreement, but we do gotta double check what it's really gonna cost.
Yep.
That's the same question Rich and Manny.
Right.
We talked about, we had a professional come in here and give us a report. We never talked about that report, right? Why aren't we talking about it?
We're not talking about
We
it.
haven't talked about that safety report.
From the state troopers that came
Right.
through a year, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago?
A year ago.
It was actually given to the board, wasn't it? I think it was given to the board when it came out. It was before you got on the board, I think, Rich, when it came out.
Did the board take action on it?
Did the board take action on the report? Came up during budget about certain items, this is when school security
officers that we
came
could
up.
put in rooms, and those proposals were one of the things we were looking at. I remember these specifically, with magnetic strips on the doors, so that the doors could be closed, and if there was an issue, the strips would be removed and the doors would be locked. Just to be sure that we had a place of locks that didn't have key somethings on the inside. But that's just one I remember. I have to go back through my notes and figure out what else was discussed. I want to say one thing about this agreement. Remember, this agreement was prepared by council, and these are the people that were here last month, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And this is not, I don't claim any authorship for this. This is what they recommended as standard in other districts. And I just give you that piece of information. And then, you know, I understand how you want it modified. Is this the document that I want to see? No, but I think that I need to give credence to the attorney that prepared it and then move on. Because I think.
But at the same time, I think the attorney needs to hear the reflections of the board, so that he may have some core ideas that are in there, but maybe there's a way to fine tune it to make it our agreement.
And I don't disagree with you. I think that what I would do is prepare the agreement and then send it to him to be sure that there aren't any statutory violations. That way it's got totally off flavor.
Right. And that's kind of the point of the motion, because you gotta go, if you're gonna do the work, you need to have authorization from the board to do it, because it's a lot of work to get this done.
Can I just point out that as much as this is a function of the attorneys that came here, the memorandums of agreement from different districts are here, and my concern is the value, like I'm concerned that this is your values versus another one that maybe is endorsed as best practice. And why wasn't this one passed along versus this one? And that's my concern with having Bob negotiate this out, because he passed this out as a model or as something to look at, when he could have passed out something that was considered best practice.
When I asked Colchester for their document, this is what they need.
But Colchester isn't doing best practice.
I'm sorry?
I mean, Colchester isn't operating under best practice.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not recommending this document. I'm just giving you an idea what the attorneys of record, what the attorneys have suggested. Now, obviously, if I'm going to craft a document, it's going to take some time, and I need to do some research as to the best practices, and to speak with some folks as to what's working and what's not working in some schools. I was just gathering information to show you some samples, and then we can move on from that point.
Any other questions?
I think one of the things that, and whether this board thought those things were helpful, that these two documents were graduated response model. So that was included in there. I would just say, and when I read this document, and maybe it goes with, I was impressed by the Connecticut Voices for Children, and I was impressed by the Colchester presentation very much so. So I think that I read this through that lens, and thinking it would be implemented. And no, but I felt good when I read this. I felt positive when I read this. I do think that, one additional objective or more, if appropriate, but could be added to 3 under objectives that line up with what is right before with the goals and what is mentioned in here. So I think it just kind of brings it back, but just to make sure it is in that positive spirit, because I think we all want our kids to be, and our staff and everybody to be safe, and for it to be a positive environment.
Any final discussion? I'd like to call the vote.
May I confirm the motion?
Yes, the motion is to authorize the superintendent to enter into negotiations with the town of Hebron for the purpose of negotiating or preparing or proposing a school resource officer agreement for the district, which will have to be approved by the board. I don't know if that's going to be in the motion, but it's the motion was made by Mike and was seconded by Kevin.
I have one question. Just so I'm clear, so we're only voting on an agreement, but is it not important that we have a discussion at some point that, is this the way? Because we're obviously going to exhaust Bob's time, we're going to exhaust some resources here. So do we want to have some more discussion on whether or not this is what the board and the public want, as far as do we want to pursue going down this road? I'm just asking the question, because I don't want to see Bob spend 1,000 hours doing this. If it's going to go, we're going to say we don't support a resource officer. I think it's important that we have some direction as a board or a field that we want to go in this direction or not. And if that means that we postpone it, and I was actually disappointed that we had a cyberbullying meeting on the same night of this important discussion. And I don't think we gave it a lot of attention that it deserves. It's an important step for this board to take. I want to give everybody the opportunity, whether I support it or I don't support it, I want to give everybody that opportunity to at least talk about it some more and the values of it. Judy, you did a great job, I think, of articulating what is in that and what is really the design purpose of a resource officer. You know, it's a big spectrum of what a police officer does, you know. I think the biggest value for the resource officer is to get the kids to engage, and then an adult who has, you know, law enforcement background, and can bridge a gap for a child that really needs help before they make the wrong step. But that's my take on it. But I really just want to make sure that we all want this. And, you know, Bob has got a million things on his plate that we are all asking him to do. And before we go down this step, is it something we really want? You know?
And Joe, I agree with you completely, and that's the point of the motion. I'm glad Mike made it, because there's no reason for him to go down this path if this board is at least in concept, not in agreement with the school resource
There's
program.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
I read something when I was reading through the minutes, that I think I highlighted it, but I can't find it right now. Oh, here it is. Of something Scott Leslie said, and so I just want to make sure I understand it. It was Wednesday, November 20th, and my minutes say Mr. Leslie recommended pulling off the table having a non-armed security guard. He noted that the benefits of an SRO are incomparable. Mr. Leslie stated he would prefer an SRO because we'll get a bigger bang for our buck. He noted that managing the entrance doors is not an issue for us at this time, and that we have no strangers entering and wandering around. To Joe's point, I would even, and I don't even know if this is an okay time, but I would want to know a little bit more about that, if that's accurate, like.
Well, I think the context of my comments, and that was following the presentation, was
Right.
really to, you know, very much in line with what Joe was asking right now and what Rich referred to earlier, is that I think the board really needs to, the discussion shouldn't be about SRO, it should be about what are your objectives? Do you want to enhance positive school climate?
Right.
Do you want to provide a safer environment in the event of a hostile individual shoot or whatnot? Do you want to more harshly address student drug abuse? Do you want to, you know, what is it you want to do? Because an SRO can do all of those things, or they can do one or two of those things, or there may be other solutions that can tackle some of those things. So if it's all about school climate, then, you know, maybe there are other things that the board would rather devote resources to. If it's all about simply barricading the building, well, then there may be other things as well. And, you know, I think all of the discussion is valuable, but I guess what I don't hear is what is the, you know, you're almost providing objectives to the document that Bob provided, whereas the objectives should be first and foremost on the table. What do you want to accomplish by this? What is the safety? What is the climate? What is the key objectives that we'd like to accomplish? And we may find at the end of the discussion that SRO is exactly the way we want to go to meet those objectives. But I feel like that piece has been absent. We've been talking about the solutions before talking about some of the reasons for those. And I think what Rich alluded to, I mean, I think if you did hire an SRO, you would find that they probably would come in and say, well, you know, you need to do this, this, and this, and this as well, because they're going to look with different eyes. You know, you should put numbers on the outside of windows. You should do some more things which may cost more money down the road. So I would, I guess, ask for a deep breath and a question of what is the objective? What is it you'd like to achieve?
Thank you, Scott.
You know, I want you people, did you share the news tonight or even yesterday? They had the siege there in Australia, the hostages.
Yeah.
When the hostages come running out, especially the women, all right, they're scared to death. Where did they run to? They ran to a man, a good man, carrying a gun.
Oh, please stop.
No, I'm not. That's how you stop it. A good man with a gun stops a bad man with a gun, all right? There's proof right there. They came running out the door, they ran into the arms or the police who carries a gun. Not some guy with a sign that's saying peace, please.
Let's get it back up, let's get back up.
All right, but then
No, no,
you're the same
appreciate it.
old belong
Let's get it back
here.
on topic, I want to close this out. We need to, we got a motion on the table, and closing discussion. Do you have any comment?
I guess I'd just like to, I'm not sure if it would look like a friendly amendment or what it would be. I'd like to make a motion that we have a close, like an executive session, a special meeting to discuss our overarching security goals. What are the recommendations from the study from last year, and what are we hoping to accomplish? And then, if an SRO fits that, great. If not, then we may be able to prioritize differently. So, make a motion to have a special, an executive session, special
You're
meeting.
making an
There's already a motion
amendment
on
to
the
the
floor.
motion. So you're making an amendment to the motion to have another meeting, a special meeting to discuss this?
To discuss
So I
our
think-
security goals.
Dan, there's already a motion on the floor.
No, there's a motion on the floor. I'm trying to figure out if it's an amendment or if it's another motion.
It's not like
It's a totally different motion.
It is,
Right, because having that conversation is kind of a different topic than moving forward with doing something. And that's kind of the crux of the conversation, right now.
And I'll second that motion.
can I make another motion on top of your motion?
Here's the sense I get. This group of 11 is not aligned, ready to tell the superintendent to move forward with an agreement.
Yeah, they need to vote.
They need to vote. The motion's on the table to vote. Now it's not an amendment, it's a new motion, so technically it's out of order. It's not a motion to the business. I'm sorry? And that one's out of order too, because we have a motion on the floor, it's been seconded, discussion is ended, it's time to vote. If you're not making an amendment, but you can't amend it with the motion that you made, it's out of order. So, okay, disagree, that's fine. So I'm gonna bring it back. We're gonna call the vote on the motion. Do we wanna authorize the superintendent to engage in negotiations with the town of Hebron for the purposes of preparing an SRO agreement for the board's approval? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? 2, 3. Any abstentions? Okay, just the motion A3.
Yes, that's what I came up with.
Motion passes.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Thank you.
5, 6, 7, actually 7, 4, I think.
Okay, that brings us
I'd like to make a motion.
out of order. What is your
to
motion?
table that.
What is your motion? Is it part of the business for tonight?
Yes, it's part of the security in the RCO. It's a repeat of Amy's motion that we have a meeting, whether it be executive or open meeting, to discuss
I will tell you this, you don't need a motion to have a meeting, to have another public forum on the discussion of public safety. If you want to have another forum on public safety, we can do that. You don't need a motion to do that. We can call a special meeting to have it, so we can have this discussion, and we can do an executive session to discuss the threats and risks and concerns that we have as a school, so that as we're putting this agreement together and any other items that we need to include in this, we can make those modifications to this agreement or structure or how it's set up. So we don't need a motion for that. We can have a meeting. Okay, that brings us to item number 9.
8.8.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we added 8.8.
Oh, 8.8, which was what?
Insurance.
That was, right, the instructions to the superintendent regarding the insurance consortium agreement.
Okay. Bob, what motion were you looking for that on?
Just that any agreement that be formulated by the group, by the insurance advisory group, be brought back to the hearing board for its approval and discussion.
Okay. So you want a motion to authorize you to go in to work with them and come up with engage, negotiate, and come back with a hearing as we ratify by the board?
Absolutely.
So we need a motion to authorize the superintendent to negotiate the new consortium agreement on behalf of the board, and then bring back that proposed final document for board ratification.
So,
Motion made by Kevin, is there a second? Second by Rich. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Is there a limit?
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to wrap it
Oh,
up.
okay.
Is that it? Is that what you?
Yeah, that's what I was in mind.
All right. Okay, no discussion on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 50 abstentions. The motion passes by way of authorization. That brings us to item number 9, information items 9.1A and 9.1B. If you have any questions, you can direct me to the administration. And that brings us to item 10, public comments. Anyone like to address the board at this time? Okay. Hearing none, that brings us to item number 11. I need a motion for the purposes of discussion and possible action regarding negotiation with the Teachers Association. And also I need a motion, or attached to that motion for the board, to go into executive session to discuss a pending claimant or threat of litigation against the Board of Education. And the board respectfully invites the superintendent to attend the executive session. So, motion made by Kevin, is there a second? Second by Rich. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Take a 5-minute recess.
Rich,